It all begins with a massive eye watching the world, drawn by humanity's miasma. Creatures known as demons start appearing on Earth, spreading terror and chaos. The power of these monsters was terrifyingly immense, surpassing any human resistance. Over the centuries, this cruel threat has claimed countless lives. However, the gods did not abandon humanity to its fate. To fight the demons, the gods gifted humanity with the blades of manifestation, weapons of divine power. The warriors who wielded these blades became known as demon hunters, specialists in protection. These fighters dedicate their lives to facing the abominations that threaten peace. At the peak of strength among all demon hunters stands a figure who is the symbol of the era. Known as the Blade Emperor, he personifies the ultimate power against evil, led by the Blade Emperor of their times. The demon hunters wage an eternal war for humanity. In present times, Kanemakuta, the current Blade Emperor, comments that it is easy to identify a good hunter. He is pressured by the Academy to quickly choose a recommended candidate, although he admits they are all talented. Kaname insists that what he is really looking for is an overwhelming ego, something essential for those who never give up. Frustrated by being interrupted by commercials, Kaname finally gives in and decides to wait until the next day. Meanwhile, he begs the other party to make up their mind soon about the choices. The current Blade Emperor, Kanemakuta, reflects on what he should do next. The story moves to an everyday setting, showing a school on an ordinary day. A young man runs in a hurry, fearing he will be late for school. He uses a movement technique, the Gale Strike, to move around quickly. The young man ends up falling on the street, attracting curious looks from pedestrians passing by. 17-year-old Haruto Kamakiri grumbles about the unnecessary effort he had to make. He says goodbye to Rika, a girl accompanying him, asking her to be careful. Some women observe the scene and comment on the worrisome increase in kidnappings of blade-bearing children. Upon hearing the comment, Rika shows a glowing mark on her hand, revealing herself to be a bearer of revelation. The women are astonished, commenting that the girl is practically a national treasure who needs to be protected. Those chosen by the gods receive the revelation, manifesting the blade of manifestation. It is said that spiritual energy is an absolute requirement to receive such a revelation. One of the women, however, suggests that there are always exceptions to this rule. They notice Haruto passing by and whisper, astonished by the fact that he does not have a single drop of spiritual energy. They comment that, besides being a failure, his parents died in an accident and his relatives suffered greatly because of him. Spiritual energy is described as the beacon by which the gods find those who are talented. Haruto hears the murmurs and realizes they are repeating the same old insult. He knows exactly how people refer to him after so much time being judged. He is called an existence abandoned by the gods, a title he has carried for as long as he can remember. Haruto reflects that, because he does not possess the spiritual energy that everyone has, he has no place in the world. He acknowledges his weakness when provoked by classmates about his inability to perform even basic manipulation. In physical education class, a classmate loudly complains about having to partner with Haruto. The school environment is hostile, marked by physical aggression against Haruto's school supplies. A group of students intimidates Haruto, making it clear that he should know his place. The group's leader provokes Haruto, suggesting they will have fun with him again today. Haruto watches his aggressors, knowing the teasing and bullying seem to have no end. The bully hits Haruto with a strike called Perfect Hurricane, throwing him against the ground. The impact is violent, sending Haruto crashing into trash cans. The attackers celebrate the feat as if they were scoring points in a game. Fallen and injured, Haruto tries to get up while promising himself that he will fight back. The bully orders Haruto to stand up, stating that they have barely reached the halfway point of the bullying session. Exhausted and pushed to his limit, Haruto struggles just to stay conscious. Someone complains that the boy is ignoring orders, asking Hibiki for help. Hibiki, the leader, interrupts the scene with a cold look, ready to handle the situation. Hibiki steps on Haruto and cruelly orders him to act like a ball. Haruto tries to deny what he heard, but Hibiki only intimidates him further. Hibiki summons his blade of manifestation, which appears enveloped in intense flames. He states that he only wishes to provide a comfortable school life for his friends. The sidekicks comment in shock about Hibiki's insanity, mentioning his ties to the Yakuza. Hibiki burns Haruto's hand with the blade, forcing him to scream in pain and beg them to stop. With a sadistic smile, Hibiki asks if he should burn the other hand too. Desperate, Haruto gives in and accepts being treated like a ball to satisfy the attacker's desire. Haruto curls up on the floor, questioning why he always ends up being the target of so much cruelty. He cries out of frustration, not understanding why he has to go through all this suffering. Someone interrupts the scene with shouts, asking what on earth they think they are doing. Hibiki ignores the commotion and orders his subordinates to prepare for the night. A teacher appears on the scene, sighing upon seeing Haruto fallen in the trash once again. The teacher reprimands Haruto, stating that he is a constant problem. He forces Haruto to clean up all the mess, while the young man laments always being the one to blame. Haruto bitterly reflects on his loneliness, concluding that he has no allies. He admits to himself that he gave up asking for help a long time ago. Meanwhile, news of a major energy disaster, a Naraka, emerges in the Toku region. A colossal demon causes a crisis, but the Blade Emperor intervenes and minimizes the damage. Rika watches the news and comments to her father about how amazing the Blade Emperor is. She declares her dream of becoming a demon hunter to protect everyone. Rika's father encourages her, while the memory of the schoolboy invades his thoughts. Haruto watches Rika from afar, desperately wishing he had spiritual energy like her. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupts his thoughts as he walks. Haruto watches in horror as his father is struck by a blow from a blade of manifestation. Masked men kidnap Rika and throw her inside a van, ignoring her screams. Haruto recognizes the kidnappers' voices and is shocked by the situation. In a quick and brutal move, the attack is completed, leaving traces of blood. The attacker remains there, holding his blade of manifestation. After the confrontation, the van speeds off, fleeing the scene with Rika as a prisoner. Haruto tries to run after the vehicle, begging them to stop. Screams of panic echo, with people asking for help and calling the police. Haruto panics, realizing there is no one around to intervene. He approaches his father's body, desperate and unable to understand the reason for such a tragedy. Haruto questions destiny, feeling the burden of always being the only one to suffer. He springs into action, asking himself what he is doing as he runs. Haruto calls emergency services, questioning his own usefulness while chasing the kidnappers. The vehicle enters an abandoned warehouse in the industrial zone. Haruto observes the location, trying to catch his breath while the van is parked. He cautiously approaches and notices a glow at the warehouse entrance. The kidnappers complain about the heat and discuss keeping their faces hidden. Haruto realizes who the attackers are and understands who is behind the kidnapping. Hibiki warns that he will make a phone call and orders them to watch the hostage. Haruto confirms that Rika is being held captive inside the structure. He decides he must act immediately to try and rescue the girl. Haruto strikes a wall of the warehouse to create an opening. The noise catches the kidnappers' attention, and they look in the direction of the sound. They decide to investigate what caused that unexpected impact. Haruto hides, observing the interior while Rika is tied up and gagged. The girl has fallen to the floor, unable to ask the kidnappers for help. Haruto comforts Rika, assuring her to stay calm because he came to save her. He hurriedly unties her, asking that they flee while the kidnappers are distracted. Rika cries with relief and thanks Haruto for showing up to help her. Haruto feels touched by the girl's gesture of gratitude. He reflects that, for the first time in his life, someone thanked him for something. Haruto feels a tinge of pride for having managed to arrive in time. Suddenly, a brutal blow hits Haruto, throwing him far away. Hibiki appears, mocking the escape attempt and treating Haruto with disdain. The kidnappers beat Haruto, mocking his failed attempt to be a hero. Hibiki invites his subordinates to continue the violence session as if it were a game of baseball. Haruto suffers unbearable pain while being brutally beaten. He begs for help, screaming desperately amidst the torture. Hibiki laughs out loud, mocking the idea that someone would come to rescue a punching bag like Haruto. Bloody and bruised, Haruto thinks that if his sacrifice served to buy time for the girl, it was worth it. A gray-haired man with glasses appears, questioning Hibiki's speed. Hibiki promptly responds to the subordinate, confirming that he followed orders immediately. The man observes Rika, calling her an absolute treasure and suggesting they can brainwash her. He notes that the girl's body is valuable due to its high spiritual energy and could be sold for a high price. The man notices Haruto's presence, describing him pejoratively as a ball with eyes. Hibiki explains he was just punishing Haruto for seeing the kidnapping, but the man orders him to kill the boy. With a sadistic smile, Hibiki prepares his blade of manifestation to eliminate Haruto. Still tied up, Haruto panics, asking why the police haven't arrived yet. He realizes he is about to die and refuses to watch Rika's cruel fate. Haruto screams with all his might for them to release the girl. Hibiki pierces Haruto's chest with his blade, stating that a ball shouldn't speak. Haruto feels his life draining away as blood flows from the mortal wound. He deeply regrets not being able to save Rika as his consciousness fades away. In a dark space, a mysterious entity asks if Haruto has finally managed to see the truth. Haruto wakes up in a mental world, surrounded by countless blades stuck in the ground. Confused, he tries to understand where he is and recalls the moment he was stabbed. Haruto looks at himself, amazed to find no wounds on his body. A voice explains that this is his mental world, where physical damage from reality does not exist. The voice mocks his posture, saying that on the brink of death, he could finally look within himself. A colossal entity, possessing a single glowing eye, reveals itself standing before him. Haruto steps back, in total shock at the sight of that imposing being. The being calls itself the god of calamity, an existence rejected even by the gods. Haruto wonders how something so terrifying can be a god superior to those who grant the blades. The god of calamity proposes a deal. He will grant a single wish to Haruto. The entity warns that by granting this wish, Haruto must sacrifice everything to achieve his goal. Haruto is stunned by the words, unable to believe what he is hearing. The entity threatens that if Haruto refuses, he will simply rot as he is. The god of calamity demands Haruto's life as payment in exchange for granting a wish. Haruto reflects on the sinister nature of that presence, but feels certain that power can accomplish what he needs. Thinking of Rika's suffering, he begs the being to save her. The entity denies the request, stating that Haruto's wish must focus on what he truly wants. Haruto screams that he wants power, so that a nobody like him can save the people he loves. The god of calamity asks if he would really sacrifice his life for others. Haruto categorically answers yes. He recalls his past life, marked by a deep emptiness and the sensation of being dead inside. Haruto recognizes that that moment, when someone finally trusted him and thanked him, changed everything. Haruto reflects that that moment of gratitude was the first time he felt truly alive. With renewed determination, he decides he will give his life if necessary to feel that again. Haruto demands the power from the god of calamity needed to overcome any obstacle. The entity accepts the request, stating that such a grand wish requires an exchange of equivalent value. The god manifests his 10 powerful claws to fuse with Haruto. He grants Haruto the 10 claws of the god of calamity as part of the pact. Power flows intensely through Haruto as the blood pact is sealed. The scene cuts to the attackers, who are preparing to abandon the crime scene. Hibiki and the other man are surprised by an unexpected and devastating event. A cosmic revelation occurs, painting the sky red as reality seems distorted. The phenomenon of revelation, a world-altering shock, manifests with full force. A colossal anomaly emerges, impacting the very structure of existence with its radiant aura. The awakened power causes a mix of happiness and absolute terror in those witnessing such an event. Manifestation of a powerful blade cuts through the environment with a bloody and intimidating aura. The sky's light changes according to the nature of the god, granting the power, enveloping everyone. Hibiki desperately asks what is happening, but no one there has the answer. Haruto reappears amidst a dark mist, exuding a dangerous aura as he walks. With bloodshot eyes and a cold expression, he orders them to take their hands off the girl. The kidnappers can hardly believe what they see, since Haruto should be dead. Haruto displays a blade of manifestation, revealing his new and terrifying source of power. The attacker is incredulous to see Haruto wielding a blade, something impossible for someone without spiritual energy. Hibiki tries to stay calm, treating Haruto as a mere disposable product that needs to be eliminated. Haruto repeats the order, once again demanding that they release Rika. Hibiki mocks Haruto's posture, believing amateurs always lose themselves when they gain power. The attacker advances furiously, promising that Haruto will regret it in the afterlife. Haruto maintains a focused and fierce gaze, prepared for the confrontation. In a swift and deadly move, he blocks Hibiki's attack. Hibiki loses his balance, visibly surprised by the young man's sudden strength. Haruto counterattacks, knocking Hibiki down with a precise and devastating move. The attacker is thrown to the ground, unable to react to Haruto's speed. A destructive shockwave spreads across the environment after the impact of the blow. Haruto notes that on that day, he finally obtained the strength needed to change his destiny. He sees himself as a complete nobody, but now he carries a responsibility far too heavy. Haruto wields his blade, ready to cut down any evil that crosses his path. The destruction around is immense, and a voice asks if the Blade Emperor understands the situation. The Blade Emperor observes everything while eating his ramen, noticing a child with a terrible destiny. He continues eating casually, impressed that the observed revelation surpasses any omen. A subordinate tries to alert the Emperor about the urgency of the case, but he asks for calm. The Emperor thanks for the ramen and says goodbye, maintaining his casual posture. He comments that, regardless of the revelation, what defines a warrior is their human ego. Kane Makuta adds that judging whether this ego is good or bad is the duty of the Blade Emperor. The scenery shows the magnitude of the revelation that shook reality. People in the city watch in astonishment at the supernatural phenomenon happening before their eyes. Human desire is identified as the true engine that wields the blade granted by the gods. The Blade Emperor reiterates that his role is to monitor the unfolding of this power. The scene ends with the destruction of the warehouse after the awakening of power. Haruto checks on Rika, relieved to discover she only fainted due to the pressure of the aura. He feels a deep relief, but realizes his own expression reveals the trauma. Haruto looks around, unable to believe he himself caused all that destruction. The god of calamity reminds Haruto that he fulfilled his part, and now it is his turn to achieve his goal. Haruto tries to concentrate to define his goal, while the unstable aura of the god hovers around him. He seems to have difficulty maintaining contact with the entity, as if the connection were failing. The entity's voice echoes, instructing Haruto to release the true power of the blade he wields. Haruto is confused by the orders, questioning what kind of connection and power those would be. He admits that, even trying, he doesn't know how to access the hidden power of his blade of manifestation. Meanwhile, the attackers try to recover from the shock caused by Haruto's unexpected intervention. Hibiki watches the scene, impressed by the magnitude of the power Haruto demonstrated having. The subordinate, scared of the blau's strength, decides he no longer wants to get involved in that situation. Kane Makuta appears suddenly, examining the location and the state of the confusion with disinterest. Kane confirms the identity of Shunpei Ida, a criminal wanted for various serious offenses. Haruto, under the effect of the new strength, confronts Kane with a sudden and aggressive attack. Kane easily dodges, assessing the situation with an analytical and bored look. Haruto feels the pressure of the fight, sweating coldly upon noticing the difference in level between them. Kane states that everything is under control, and that doing bad deeds is not acceptable. Haruto panics, thinking Kane's strike was so fast he even saw illusions. Kane calmly asks if Haruto was the one who caused all that destruction in the warehouse. Haruto replies while Kane identifies himself merely as a passing demon hunter. The shockwave caused by the impact of Haruto's blade left impressive marks on the environment. Kane notes that the attack was strong enough to repel the enemy without causing fatal injuries. Haruto gets into a guard position, holding his blade with a threatening and unstable aura. Hibiki watches in horror, unable to believe Haruto managed to obtain such a powerful blade suddenly. Kane notices the sinister spiritual energy leaking from Haruto's sword, something out of the ordinary. He states that a malevolent god seems to reside inside Haruto's blade. Haruto looks at the entity, scared to realize his weapon carries something dark. The entity openly mocks the situation, laughing at Haruto's apparent weakness. Kaname warns that he will break Haruto's blade to avoid bigger problems. Haruto prepares, surprised by the opponent's direct intention to destroy his weapon. The two collide their blades with force, creating intense sparks that illuminate the warehouse. The floor cracks under the direct impact of the blows exchanged between them. Haruto is terrified, feeling he almost lost his life in the initial confrontation. Kaname moves with elegance, remembering that besides fighting, his duty is to maintain peace. The confrontation continues with Kaname pressing Haruto, who tries to defend himself as best he can. Kaname expresses surprise that Haruto's blade resisted his strike without breaking. He assures that he has no intention of hurting Haruto, but insists the power is dangerous. Haruto wonders if his sword is really such a big threat as to attract an experienced hunter. The god of calamity whispers in Haruto's mind that power has a vital cost. Kaname demands that Haruto hand over the blade peacefully, but the young man refuses. Kaname sighs and prepares for combat, regretting having to fulfill his duty with force. Haruto grips the hilt of the blade, determined not to give up the power he conquered. He charges at Kaname, but is repelled by superhuman speed. The strikes follow one another at high speed, creating a trail of light in the air. The fight intensifies with Haruto trying to keep up with his adversary's precise movements. Haruto feels the blade vibrate, reacting intensely to the ongoing combat. Kaname fires a series of quick attacks, testing the young man's skills. The structure of the place suffers more damage as the two combatants move. Haruto momentarily loses control due to the extreme effort demanded by the blade. He launches himself through the air, trying to gain an advantage with an acrobatic move. Kaname recognizes that, despite being inexperienced, Haruto's instincts are surprisingly good. Haruto struggles to keep up with the pace, feeling exhausted and close to his physical limit. Kaname observes Haruto's state, recognizing that the blade's power is clearly not suitable for him. Haruto suffers a violent impact as the fight continues frantically. Kaname stops the combat and seriously questions what Haruto aims to achieve with that destructive power. Haruto answers without hesitation that his goal is to help people, but Kaname admits he doesn't fully trust his answer. Haruto insists he is telling the truth and is not joking. He recalls that saving that girl was the first time he felt truly alive. Kaname comments that the boy was simply intoxicated by the strength of the blade of manifestation, since helping someone brings a pleasant sensation. The Blade Emperor suggests that, similarly, killing someone for the first time can also generate a feeling of satisfaction. He warns Haruto about the risk of becoming a prisoner of power, letting himself get carried away by the desire to fight endlessly. Haruto repositions himself, keeping his guard high and showing determination in his gaze. The impact of a new blow generates a cloud of dust and debris around the two. Kaname states he does not deny Haruto's essence, suggesting it is possible to do good even without so much destructive power. Haruto breathes with difficulty, feeling the weight of the exhausting battle he just fought. Kaname observes the state of Haruto's blade, recognizing that the blow dealt by the young man was not from an amateur. The Emperor reflects that power is a double-edged sword, capable of saving or destroying everything around. Kaname approaches, noticing the excessive effort is causing only more suffering to the boy, and decides to end the combat. A new clash occurs, with Haruto being forced to retreat before Kaname's overwhelming pressure. Haruto lets out a scream of panic, feeling a terrifying pressure coming from the opponent. He trembles uncontrollably, admitting to himself that sensation is worse than the moment he died. Kaname warns that the next blow will be fatal and orders Haruto to drop the blade immediately. Haruto laments that although he can help people without weapons, he feels there are lives he can only save by using this power. Kaname reacts with surprise, commenting that it would be an immense waste if he died there. The young man is confused by Kaname's comment about waste. Kaname smiles slightly and decides to change his approach in the face of Haruto's stubbornness. He confesses that if he couldn't convince the boy to give up, the fault is entirely his. A violent spark occurs during the block, with both maintaining maximum pressure. The final clash results in an energy explosion that shakes the entire location. Haruto remembers the pact with the god of calamity as his blade emanates the power of the 10 claws. The cutting power of the blade seems capable of dividing anything he decides to hit. Spiritual energy is channeled intensely, making the blade infinitely sharp as Haruto uses it. Haruto releases a visceral scream as power flows through his entire being. The trail of destructive energy cuts through the scenery, leaving deep marks in the industrial environment. Haruto reaffirms his resolution to cut down any obstacle standing in his way. He raises the blade for a new attack, prepared for the next move. However, an unexpected reaction makes Haruto bend over in pain as he feels the strain of the impact. The young man realizes in horror that the blade has broken during the clash. Kaname remains standing, watching the boy who is now unarmed and in shock. He comments with disdain that Haruto didn't let go of the blade even after it broke. Kaname puts away his own weapon, revealing that he trusts the boy's heart. Haruto looks at the ground, confused by the opponent's sudden change in behavior. Kaname says he no longer intends to break the sword and offers help to treat Haruto's injured arm. Haruko questions the sudden change, receiving the explanation that demon hunters usually communicate through their blades. Kaname states he felt the truth in Haruto's feelings, confirming the genuine desire to save people. He admits that through that final clash, he managed to glimpse the true essence of Haruto's soul. Kaname guarantees that as long as the purpose is to hold the sword firmly, Haruto will be safe, and he will not take it away. Haruto desperately apologizes for breaking Kaname's precious sword. Kaname laughs at the misunderstanding, explaining that a blade of manifestation is like a hunter's life. He reveals that the sword he used was merely a replica, part of his hobby collection. Kaname advises Haruto to prove his worth to others. Since he is the only one who believes in the boy for now, he reinforces that the first step to Haruto's success is learning to wield his blade properly. Kaname offers to help with training, mentioning that he knows the perfect place for it. Kaname suggests to Haruto that he apply for the entrance exam of a certain academy. Haruto is surprised and confused by Kaname's sudden proposal. Kaname mentions Togoku Academy, known as the gateway for aspiring demon hunters. The institution is the place where the young man must train to become an official demon hunter. Kaname insists that entering Togoku Academy is the necessary path for Haruto's growth. Kaname's goal is for Haruto to attend the place and prepare professionally for combat. 2 days pass quickly after the conversation, with the day of the exam finally arriving. Kaname hands Haruto a handwritten note, serving as a last-minute letter of recommendation. Haruto finds himself before the academy, still processing how he ended up following Kaname's advice. Togoku Academy is famous for being the elite institution where all great demon hunters graduate. Observing the crowd around, Haruto questions whether all those candidates really intend to take the exam. He notices that everyone present carries a blade of manifestation, which intimidates him. Haruto reflects on his own sword, which remains silent and inactive in his hand. He remembers the need to learn to extract the true value and hidden power of his weapon. Haruto vents to the blade, lamenting that it has never responded or emitted any sound at all. He wonders if, upon entering the academy, he will finally have the chance to speak with it and awaken its strength. Despite the doubts, Haruto maintains his determination to use that power to save human lives. He feels he has finally found a purpose for his life and is willing to give his best. Kaname appears suddenly, startling Haruto, but encouraging the boy with his enthusiasm. Kaname formally introduces himself as Akuda while walking around the school surroundings. Haruto thanks him for the recommendation, but admits he is worried because he doesn't know what to expect from the tests. Akuda seems to forget he gave details and lets out an exclamation, leaving Haruto worried about the mentor's sanity. Akuda explains that the selection process consists of a total of 3 different exams. Each stage is worth 100 points, totaling 300, and final approval will depend on the accumulated score. Haruto worries about not having any knowledge about blade handling or combat techniques. Akuda gives a thumbs up and states Haruto will do fine, increasing the young man's doubts about the mentor. The official announcement calls candidates to head to the testing area for the start of the first exam. Akuta reassures the boy, saying the first phase is merely a written general knowledge test. Akuta comments that he is eager to see what path Haruto will decide to forge with his blade. Haruto responds politely, trying to stay calm in the face of the challenge he is about to face. He tries to stay confident, repeating to himself that Akuta is an experienced hunter and knows what he's talking about. Haruto arrives at the building destined for the first exam, determined to dedicate himself to studying to the utmost. He believes that even without spiritual energy, he can compensate with good academic performance. Haruto opens the question booklet and, in an instant, his eyes widen at the content presented. He panics upon realizing the general knowledge exam is actually something much more complex. The test demands deep knowledge about elemental manipulation techniques and reconnaissance strategies. Questions on divination and spiritual rituals leave Haruto in shock and completely desperate. He realizes too late that Akuta's advice about the basics was very far from the test's reality. Meanwhile, other candidates discuss their scores, revealing that the test is extremely difficult. Haruto enters an emotional collapse, realizing he managed to answer absolutely nothing on the questionnaire. At that moment, a man approaches and identifies Haruto by the name of Kamikiri. The individual aggressively questions what someone like him would be doing at Togoku Academy. He criticizes Haruto, claiming the boy only brings trouble wherever he goes. Confused and disheartened, Haruto tries to explain that he received a legitimate recommendation to be there. The man doesn't believe the justification and demands to see Haruto's exam voucher immediately. The pressure of the situation makes Haruto recall traumatic memories that leave him paralyzed with fear. The man analyzes the document and, to his own surprise, confirms the recommendation is real. Upon checking the result, it is noted that Haruto's score on the test was only 2 points. The examiner shouts indignantly, questioning if the young man has any idea where he got himself into with such a low performance. Other candidates recognize Haruto as the guy rejected by the gods and express contempt for his presence. The examiner rips Haruto's voucher, looking down on the boy for his lack of education and spiritual energy. Haruto helplessly watches the pieces of his document fly away, while the man insists his presence is an insult. The other candidates walk away and move forward, leaving Haruto behind with the wreckage of his dream. Akuta observes the scene from a distance, maintaining interest in knowing which path Haruto will choose with his blade. Haruto remains kneeling on the ground in shock, seeing the ripped voucher scattered around him. The setting changes to the location where the second exam, focused on blade aptitude, will take place. The large stadium is packed with candidates, prepared for the evaluation of their skills. One candidate demonstrates the destruction type, attacking a statue with a blow loaded with energy. Another participant displays the support type, channeling energy to enhance performance during the test. A third student reveals the healing type, bringing regenerative benefits during their demonstration. The evaluator directs the students to head to the appropriate booths to demonstrate the specific skills of their weapons. The pink-haired examiner welcomes everyone to the destruction sector, where frontline hunters are tested. She explains that the practical task consists of striking the statue, with the effectiveness of the impact being the criterion for the score. The warning is given that the statue has the durability of an intermediate-level demon, demanding full effort from the students. Candidates watch nervously as one of the students prepares to perform their attack against the monument. Candidate number 104 advances with a powerful blow, releasing intense energy toward the target. The attack hits the statue, generating a visible impact, but Haruto and the others notice the material's resistance. The participant is surprised to see his blade deflected, exclaiming that the target is harder than steel. The examiner analyzes the superficial damage and awards 50 points, calling the next candidate in line. Another student prepares, infusing his blade with electricity to deliver a heavy blow. The cutting technique clashes against the statue, producing sparks and a considerable damage mark. The examiner evaluates the performance at 65 points, showing satisfaction with the display of skill. Sato, the school's prodigy student, is cheered by colleagues after his flawless presentation. Sato confidently comments that his ability to infuse lightning into the blade was the differentiator for success in the attack. A student walks toward the statue, exuding a powerful aura that grabs everyone's attention. The examiner watches the movement with seriousness, murmuring that the demonstration is magnificent. The blow causes the total destruction of the statue, guaranteeing a perfect score of 100 points for the student. The public present in the stadium goes wild, astounded by the level of power they just witnessed. The talented student puts away his blade with a precise movement, maintaining a calm and imposing posture. He remains in the center of the field, attracting the looks of all the other candidates around him. The young man silently orders everyone to calm down and maintain focus on their own blades. The examiner notes the heavy atmosphere created by his presence and pities whoever has to go next. Tension in the stadium remains high as the talented student withdraws from the test field. Haruto observes the scenery from above, feeling the pressure of the environment while the examiner comments on his lineage. The examiner praises the young man as the second son of the prestigious Ridoji family. He expresses relief and satisfaction, the high quality of the new students entering the academy. Akura, following everything, ironically questions the concept of quality the examiner just mentioned. The examiner tries to justify himself, stating he only seeks a fair evaluation for all candidates. The prodigy student looks down on the mediocre level of the others, finding the current state of the renowned Togoku Academy laughable. While withdrawing, the young man physically collides with Haruto, who tries to apologize quickly. Haruto asks for forgiveness for the delay and the collision, looking lost amidst the event. Silence takes over the place as candidates notice Haruto's presence in line. Haruto comments on the strange silence, not knowing if the exam had already come to an end. The examiner announces she will end the activities if there are no more challengers, forcing Haruto to step forward. The elite student disdains the latecomer's presence, annoyed by the low level of competitors. He notices something strange about Haruto's blade and wonders if it would have reacted to the clumsy boy. Haruto tries to maintain his balance while rushing to present himself before the examiner. The prodigy student looks back, still unable to believe the reaction he saw, questioning if that would be possible. Haruto hands his voucher to the examiner, anxiously asking to be evaluated. The document displays the score of 2 points on the first exam, revealing the boy's terrible academic situation. The examiner asks Haruto to prepare and step forward to perform his aptitude test. One of the candidates watches the scene with disdain, questioning if Haruto will really try anything without possessing some spiritual energy. Haruto takes a deep breath and positions himself before the statue, concentrating for the challenge. Amidst the insults he receives, Haruto recalls the difficulties he faced so far and refuses to give up. He delivers a powerful blow against the statue, releasing a shock wave that impacts the environment. The examiner and observers are flabbergasted by the intensity of Haruto's demonstration. The boy maintains a fixed and determined gaze, feeling power flow intensely through his blade. Meanwhile, the elite student is praised for his perfect performance and comments on an interesting rumor about Haruto. He reveals he heard about a candidate personally recommended by the Blade Emperor, who would be Haruto Kamakuri. The impact of Haruto's blow deeply cracks the statue, proving his strength goes far beyond appearance. The examiner notes that although the cut was crude and unrefined, the applied power was impressive. She reflects that the lack of technique is precisely what makes his connection with the blade so unique. Haruto puts his hand on his face, feeling the effort of the movement, while reflecting on his own power. The environment around Haruto grows tense, as other candidates murmur about the unexpected feat. The statue is completely destroyed by the blow, guaranteeing Haruto a maximum score of 100 points. He reaffirms to himself the promise to keep moving forward toward his goals. Determined not to let insults bring him down, Haruto celebrates his total score of 102 points. The examiner reflects that every year, a new rough jewel ends up emerging amidst the crowd. The scene shifts to the examiner's room, where the climate of analysis regarding the candidates continues. They review the test footage, observing the best performances recorded during the day. One of the examiners highlights the boy, classifying him as the most intriguing jewel of this year. The Blade Emperor, Kanam, states he is satisfied with the talent he found. His interlocutor disagrees, revealing he does not share the same enthusiasm. He questions the Emperor about the sinister aura he noticed emanating from the young man's blade. The examiner warns that energy is a true seed of trouble for the Academy. Kanam laments that surveillance over the boy was not maintained as he expected. The other examiner challenges Kanam with a bet regarding the final outcome of the third exam. They bet on whether or not Haruto will get first place in the last stage, with his training as the reward. The examiner asks what Kanam will offer in case he loses the bet. Kanam replies that he will grant any wish within the reach of his power as Blade Emperor. The examiner accepts the challenge, sealing the agreement between the two leaders. They agree that the final test will test the true essence of a demon hunter. The examiner finishes by saying they will observe all the potential Haruto has to offer. Candidates gather in a closed, dark, and cramped location for the start of the third phase. Haruto prepares mentally, knowing he needs a flawless performance to get approved. The signal sounds, drawing the attention of everyone present to the final instructions. The third exam is declared open, generating anxious anticipation among the students. The task is revealed: an intensive demon hunt lasting 3 hours. The test will take place in a reserved area of the Academy, known as the Demon Reserve. The location is a dense forest that attracts miasma from nearby spiritual lineages. The reserve is strictly managed to contain low to intermediate level demons. Haruto is shocked to hear he will have to face intermediate-level creatures in the test. Candidates receive an identification badge that serves as an emergency system. The object will activate a forced return spell if the student loses the ability to fight. The examiner clarifies that activation of the spell results in 0 points for the participant. She emphasizes that knowing how to avoid danger is just as essential as combat ability. Haruto prepares to give his all, ready to attack and secure his victory. Haruto's movement indicates he is ready for an immediate start. The organization decides to separate the groups, starting only with candidates who achieved higher scores. The third exam officially begins, with students advancing into the reserve. Raidoji Toya leads the ranking with a flawless score, totaling 198 points. While the organization prepares the next group, Haruto feels increasingly pressured by the situation. 45 minutes pass inside the dense forest of the reserve as candidates begin the search. An examiner advises Haruto not to push himself beyond his limit and just do his best. The last group receives permission to start, and Haruto dashes toward the woods with determination. One of the examiners expresses his shock upon remembering that someone with such a low score passed to the final test. Haruto runs through the forest, noting that the creatures near the reserve entrance have probably already been eliminated by the others. He is surprised by the unusual lightness of his own body, feeling a level of agility he has never experienced. The young man recalls the confrontation with Akuda, realizing he can now perform movements that previously seemed impossible. Haruto recognizes that the energy accumulated since receiving his blade is finally manifesting. He identifies the sensation as the fusion of spiritual energy with the strengthening of his own body. Ecstatic, Haruto celebrates with an expression of pure joy for managing to move with such speed. He realizes he is now finally experiencing the world in the same way as the other hunters. Haruto advances rapidly through the trees, maintaining intense focus on his environment. A demon suddenly emerges from the bushes, catching Haruto by surprise and forcing a quick reaction. Haruto faces the creature up close, feeling imminent danger as he is attacked head-on by the beast. He is knocked down by the impact, feeling the weight of the attack and the shock of direct confrontation. Haruto recovers in the trees and realizes the demon's attack was much weaker than he imagined. Comparing it to the impact felt previously, he notices a glaring difference in the strength of the adversaries. He cuts through the air with his sword, quickly eliminating the demons that appear in his path. With a fierce smile and glowing eyes, he concludes those adversaries pose no challenge. Haruto celebrates his first victory, feeling confident enough to keep up the pace of the hunt. Meanwhile, other candidates fight a large group of demons emerging deeper in the forest. Students shout orders at each other, trying to coordinate their attacks amidst the confusion of battle. A bespectacled girl enters the group, using her powers to offer support to the allies. She positions herself strategically, channeling her energy to ensure team efficiency. Another group member delivers a precise blow against the demon surrounding them. Using a containment technique, they manage to immobilize several creatures at the same time. Even with the team's efficiency, one of the monsters escapes their defenses and charges at them. They remain optimistic, believing cooperation will lead them to the top of the final ranking. Suddenly, the bespectacled girl is hit full on and loses her arm in a bloody instant. The group panics completely upon witnessing the brutality of the sudden injury. The forced return spell activates automatically, making the girl disappear from the forest. Her companions desperately question what happened and if the enemy was an intermediate level. Haruto appears on the scene, observing the creature that attacked the group previously. Without hesitating, he charges at the monster and defeats it with a direct and fast blow. Wounded and in shock, the girl screams in pain while watching the combat unfold. Haruto delivers a final attack with pure energy, eliminating the threat for good. He finishes the movement in size, exhausted and still trying to process the monster's speed. Haruto finally recognizes that that demon was of an intermediate level. He approaches the fallen girl, who looks at the boy with a mix of fear and relief. Haruto lands safely, keeping his guard up regarding potential additional attacks. The girl realizes she was saved at the last second by the stranger. Haruto kneels, incredulous at having managed to defeat such a dangerous opponent. The girl notices that the young man in front of her seems to be acting strangely or embarrassed. She asks if he is from the famous Ryudoji family. While Haruto apologizes for his behavior, Haruto thanks her for understanding, admitting that she was indeed in great danger. He bows deeply in a gesture of respect and concern toward his colleague. The girl is confused by the apology, while Haruto responds enthusiastically. He says goodbye quickly, determined to continue the hunt and give his best until the end. Haruto vibrates with happiness upon realizing he managed to save someone again, feeling genuinely alive. He plans to follow the combat sounds to find more demons, earn points, and still be thanked. The young man leaps agilely through the trees, guided by the noise of battle happening just ahead. Haruto arrives at the location and finds himself before an intense conflict, ready to intervene in the fight. After the confrontation, Haruto receives a sincere thank you from a candidate whose life was saved by him. He feels a deep euphoria and a racing heartbeat in his chest, discovering that sensation is the best of all. Haruto reflects on his luck, noting that so far he hasn't encountered any intermediate-level demons. He decides that if he encounters anything too dangerous, his absolute priority will be to flee quickly. Suddenly, Haruto comes across a terrifying sight, a large group of demons surrounding an opponent. He perceives extreme danger and plunges toward the confusion to offer his help. Haruto extends his hand, offering immediate support to the combatant cornered by the monsters. The figure, however, refuses the help and rudely orders Haruto to get out of his way. The opponent unleashes a powerful technique called Furious Dragon Arm, devastating the area with blue energy. Haruto barely dodges, visibly shocked by the overwhelming force released by the other fighter. The fighter watches Haruto recover from the dodge and comments that he seems to be doing fine. The young man recognizes Haruto, calling him by his full name without any hesitation. Haruto finds it strange to be recognized, vaguely remembering seeing him during the second exam. Without warning, the man delivers a swift blow, forcing Haruto to block with his own blade. Haruto screams, confused and frustrated with that opponent's aggressive and sudden attitude. The man insists he cannot accept Haruto's presence or power there. He demands that Haruto prove his worth and demonstrate the power that won the Blade Emperor's approval. The man presses his blade hard, declaring he wants to see Haruto's true potency. Haruto protests, remembering he barely defeated any monster and that this is not the time to fight each other. The opponent ignores the argument, focused solely on testing Haruto's skills and potential. Haruto looks up, deciding that if the challenge is inevitable, he will not back down. The man jumps backward, preparing for another round of frantic attacks against Haruto. Haruto wonders what just happened and why he retreated almost by instinct. The man counters Haruto's speech, questioning if he really considered that clash trivial. Haruto recalls that exam was the first time someone recognized him and pointed out a path. The opponent watches Haruto, maintaining his posture of superiority amidst the forest. Haruto reaffirms, with a fierce gaze, that even if the exam seems simple to the other, to him it is important. Haruto advances with determination, ready to respond to the opponent's fast strikes. The examiners observe everything, laughing at Haruto's stubbornness and selfish desire to save people. The image reflects the tension between Haruto and his mysterious and powerful challenger. The examiner watches the monitors, commenting that some unpredictable candidates always appear. The group of examiners agrees that this year's crop of students is truly exceptional. She notes, however, that intermediate-level demons are obstacles they should avoid. Kusabi asks his colleague if they should intervene if the situation gets out of control. They observe that the death of an intermediate demon can attract much greater dangers to the area. Haruto concentrates his energies and charges into attack with his blade raised. An arcing strike cuts across the opponent's field of vision, forcing him to react. The clash continues, with both maintaining an intense and dangerous exchange of blows. Haruto admits to himself that the man's speed strongly reminds him of the previous confrontation with Akuta. The opponent analyzes Haruto's style, noting that although he is an amateur, he relies on superhuman reflexes. The man looks down on Haruto, provoking him about the weakness of his performance so far. He orders Haruto to show everything he truly possesses and stop holding back. The man jumps and delivers a blow charged with energy, demanding that Haruto give his all. Haruto is thrown backward, frustrated by not understanding why he is being forced to fight. Suddenly, both are surrounded by a massive horde of demons appearing out of nowhere. Haruto assumes his combat stance, ready to face the wave of creatures surrounding them. Haruto watches with apprehension as the huge swarm of demons advances rapidly toward his position. Toya reveals the creatures are there because he's demon, attracting incense along the path. Haruto reacts indignantly to the irresponsible attitude, but Toya dismisses the swarm, treating them as insignificant. Toya criticizes Haruto for acting independently and demands to know who he thinks he is. Haruto calmly replies with his name, maintaining his posture in the face of Toya's evident hostility. Toya mocks Haruto's response, thinking he exaggerates the drama when introducing himself. The forest becomes a chaotic battlefield, with demons emerging from all sides around the duo. Haruto and Toya move quickly, exchanging blows and eliminating the monsters trying to attack them. Toya jumps and notices something strange coming his way, interrupting his movement with a warning shout. Haruto questions if the boy felt something strange in the air, staying alert for what is to come. Toya ignores the comment, suddenly feeling a terrifying pressure that leaves him paralyzed with surprise. He realizes that malevolent presence is impossible to ignore and begins to lament the current situation. Toya explains that when killing demons, the miasma forming their bodies tends to accumulate in the environment. He warns that when this miasma concentration becomes massive, it attracts much higher-level demons. Haruto finally understands the bad feeling in the air is caused by the toxic miasma surrounding them. An imposing, divine-looking creature emerges before them, exuding a frightening purple aura. The demon fires a devastating attack that shakes the entire terrain, forcing both to react. The creature floats calmly, displaying black spheres around its body pulsating with energy. Toya feels the entity's immense pressure and confirms they are undoubtedly facing a high-level demon. Haruto enters a state of shock, processing that the monster is far superior to any intermediate he faced. Toya corrects Haruto, explaining it is a high-level threat, while the spheres look like projectiles. Toya takes responsibility for the situation, admitting he hunted too many demons in too short a time interval. He states that creature is his prey and orders Haruto to stay away so as not to interfere. Haruto wishes him good luck, though still confused by the dangerous situation they got themselves into. Toya guarantees that as soon as he defeats this monster, he will turn his attention to resolving pending issues with Haruto. He decides to face the challenge alone, preparing to deal with the spheres surrounding the monster. The man stares intently at the spheres, trying to deduce if they act as homing projectiles. The main doubt consuming him is how fast and how resistant that entity can really be. The demon prepares a strike, causing Toya to move with extreme speed to dodge. He uses the running dragon technique, cutting through the air in a swift movement to counterattack the target. The clash between Toya's blade and the creature's defense generates intense sparks throughout the environment. Toya is thrown backward by the impact, feeling the monster's strength through his own sword. He concludes the opponent is extremely resistant, but believes he can defeat him through speed. Toya watches with irritation as the wounds he inflicts regenerate almost instantly. Haruto shouts a desperate warning upon noticing an onslaught coming from a blind spot. Toya reacts in the last millisecond, executing a precise movement to avoid critical damage. He is thrown far away again, momentarily losing stability amidst the energy tempest. The demon advances with fury, repeatedly attacking with its strange and unreachable powers. Toya tries to find the origin of the attack, noting he cannot feel sound or energy coming from that direction. He suspects the monster might be using some kind of curse or invisible trap. Seeing the danger, Haruto shouts for Toya to look up and try dodging again. Both jump in opposite directions, while invisible attacks destroy the terrain where they were. Haruto realizes the enemy possesses a strength he can barely comprehend. Toya finally understands the threat upon mentioning the existence of invisible spheres attacking all the time. He reflects that the visible spheres are mere distractions, while the real threat remains hidden. Toya wonders, perplexed, how Haruto managed to identify the danger and react so quickly. Haruto's eyes glow an intense red, revealing he is activating a hidden power. The boy remains motionless, observing the forest with frightening intensity as the combat escalates. Haruto realizes the creature's true attack form reveals itself through energy patterns. It becomes clear he developed this ability alone, back in the days when he possessed no spiritual energy. Haruto concentrates his energies to protect himself, while threats hover over him. He watches as the demon's onslaughts advancing toward his position. This intense observation became part of his daily survival routine. A blow from a high-level demon possesses enough power to kill a person easily. What Haruto felt coming his way was death itself. Having died once and overcome death again, Haruto feels his abilities change. Through the crucible of death, Haruto's abilities were elevated to a completely new level. Therefore, Haruto can now perceive the sensation of death emanating from every attack. He senses the creature's danger, with dark energies closing around him. Haruto focuses his vision on the attack patterns the demon prepares against him. With agility, he maneuvers his blade in a precise movement to counterattack the onslaught. Before him, the creature keeps floating, surrounded by its mysterious black spheres. Haruto assesses the situation and concludes things are bad, no matter how he analyzes it. He realizes that if that high-level demon gets loose, the other candidates will be in great danger. Haruto panics at the thought of destruction, but decides he must fight using his blade. He feels this is the crucial moment to act and protect whatever is possible. Toya questions what Haruto thinks he is doing, incredulous at him facing an elite monster. The black spheres continue to orbit the creature, exuding an oppressive pressure on the location. Visibly perplexed, Toya asks Haruto how he manages to see those attacks. Toya admits he didn't even notice it was a sphere until he was hit by the blow. Haruto wonders if the perception of the attack gets blurred for Toya when the sphere approaches. A wave of lesser creatures emerges on the battlefield, further complicating the situation. Toya curses, annoyed to notice another swarm was attracted by the smell of miasma. Energy flows as the two prepare to deal with the new threats arising. Toya decides to use the furious dragon arm to contain the intermediate-level swarm. He orders Haruto to keep total focus on observing the creature's black spheres. Haruto is amazed by Toya's audacity in making decisions on his own in the middle of combat. Toya insists there are ways to fight against the spheres, delegating this task to the protagonist. He knows that if he reveals the danger, Haruto might end up acting recklessly. While Toya moves away for the confrontation, Haruto remains observing the superior entity. The creature fires more attacks, moving its energy tendrils toward the boy. Haruto fights desperately, feeling he is the only one capable of seeing and reacting to the spheres. He grips the hilt of his sword, concentrating his intention on the next defensive move. Haruto understands his blade only cuts what he decides to cut, demanding total focus from his part. He performs a precise cut, deflecting the impact that would come his way. The black spheres continue to pulsate around the demon, intensifying the malevolent aura. Haruto decides he will clear everything in his path all at once. He advances, leaving a trail of energy while trying to approach the entity. Frustrated, he notes the creature's movement is much faster than he expected. Haruto admits he cannot focus on the spheres until they are about to hit him. The problem is the creature keeps multiplying projectiles faster than he can cut them. Facing the deadlock, he considers ignoring the spheres and focusing solely on attacking the main body. Inspired by his mentor's combat style, Haruto prepares a new onslaught. He analyzes the flow of battle, calculating the trajectory of each sphere crossing his path. Haruto feels he has finally found the perfect moment to perform his attack. He strikes, but realizes the demon's defense is more resistant than he predicted. The attack is deflected and Haruto wonders how the enemy reacted so quickly. He discovers with horror that there are invisible spheres he simply could not detect. The impact of the revelation forces him to retreat, feeling the magnitude of that entity's power. Haruto lets out a sigh, trying to pull himself together so as not to be eliminated by the unexpected attack. Haruto realizes with frustration his attacks are not reaching the demon due to invisible defenses. Toya shouts for Haruto, visibly worried about the critical situation the boy finds himself in. Haruto falls to the ground, exhausted and injured, while the environment around seems to crumble under pressure. He murmurs a lament, feeling his strength finally running out at the crucial moment. Haruto's consciousness begins to fail as he struggles to stay awake. The protagonist feels the same drop into his subconscious. Fearing this time death might be definitive, an authoritative and severe voice echoes in his mind, calling him pathetic for almost dying to such weak beings. The entity questions Haruto's attitude, ironizing the fact that he is still weak despite possessing the 10 claws. Haruto counters, accusing the creature of leaving him without any instruction on how to use the granted power. The protagonist argues he couldn't fight invisible spheres he cannot even detect. The entity explains he fails by focusing only on direct death, ignoring the enemy itself. With an intense gaze, the voice orders Haruto to focus entirely on the opponent to overcome the challenge. It instructs Haruto to analyze everything the enemy uses, treating each attack as a lethal blade. Haruto visualizes the threat as a rain of blades, ready to claim his life at any moment. He feels the pressure increase while trying to assimilate the new perspective on the battlefield. Skeptical, the entity comments that he makes it look easy, despite the real danger. Haruto closes his eyes, finally understanding the lesson needed to advance his power. The voice pushes him back into the confrontation, warning that death approaches rapidly. Haruto returns to reality, feeling the power of the 10 claws pulse intensely in his hands. He delivers a quick movement, cutting through the air and the energies surrounding him previously. Upon realizing he survived, Haruto sighs with relief for not having died in that onslaught. He concludes the danger he felt was the warning of imminent death, but now he can see the flow. Haruto reaffirms to himself the need to maintain absolute focus on the enemy. He realizes he cannot let himself get caught by the spheres and must act with determination. Haruto faces the threat with a blade loaded with pure malice and will to win. With bloodshot red eyes, he finally manages to see the enemy's openings. The inner voice orders him to capture the attack pattern and destroy the creature. Haruto prepares the definitive blow, ready to slice everything coming against him. He releases the power of the 10 claws in a devastating attack that cuts through space around him. Exhausted, Haruto realizes he managed to hit the target, while Toya watches the scene astounded. Haruto collapses to the ground, victorious but completely drained by the energies he used. The weight of exhaustion overtakes his body as he loses the strength to continue. The announcement echoes through the forest, indicating the third exam has come to an end. A message orders the immediate cessation of combat for the start of forced transfer. Toya walks over to Haruto, expressing genuine shock at seeing the boy survive the duel. He stresses that survival does not mean Haruto's performance was excellent. Barely able to speak, Haruto ignores Toya's contempt and declares he does not seek his approval. In a control room, those in charge decide that the defeat of that demon will be credited exclusively to Haruto. The guideline is that whoever defeats a high-level target receives the highest available rating. Toya questions if he won the bet, but the evaluator insists total score is still insufficient. The observer ponders they cannot discard someone who defeated an elite demon on their own. The director decides Haruto will be approved, fulfilling the promise made to the Blade Emperor. The evaluator sighs with relief for not having failed, but maintains caution about the danger the boy represents. He guarantees that should Haruto become a threat to the world, he will take personal responsibility for eliminating him. The other man smiles, reminding his colleague that guiding Haruto to prevent that future is his job. The man observes unconscious Haruto, wishing he stays within acceptable limits. Togoku Academy appears under a clear sky, marking the start of a new phase. Now in his academic attire, Haruto arrives at the academy for the entrance ceremony. The hall is packed with new students, listening attentively to the official oath. Toya appears on stage, staring at the crowd as one of the new students of Togoku Academy. Haruto observes Toya, who managed to enter the academy occupying the top-ranked student spot. The protagonist reflects on his own journey, remembering that just a month ago, he never would have imagined being there. He recognizes it all started when he met Akuta and decides to focus on honing his skills at the academy. Haruto reaffirms his commitment to becoming a demon hunter capable of protecting everyone. Amidst the new students, he suddenly questions the exact definition of a demon hunter. Doubt hovers over his head, making him reconsider the meaning of the title he aims to conquer. The academy director, Akutako Kanam, appears surprisingly, exclaiming the class is excellent. Students are open-mouthed, unable to understand how, and when he appeared before everyone in the auditorium, Akuta praises the unlimited potential of the freshmen and expresses his enthusiasm as director of the institution. With a quick movement, he drives his sword into the stage, grabbing the immediate attention of everyone present. Cosmic energy envelopes the director, creating a magical atmosphere, leaving the audience fascinated. New students look at the projected sky in the auditorium, completely stunned by the spectacle. Haruto wonders, marveling if that is the real power a blade of manifestation can perform. Akuta highlights the immense responsibility of hunters, whose aspirations must surpass the vastness of the universe. He calls students to nurture their potential and maintain faith in themselves as they advance on the journey. The director emphasizes that those obtaining power carry the vital duty of making important choices. The crowd whispers among themselves, finally recognizing the legendary figure of Akuta Kaname on stage. Haruto watches with admiration, confirming it really is the famous demon hunter. Akuta explains that regardless of the nobility of their techniques, value lies in the use given to them. The director challenges youths to constantly question the reason why they wished to become hunters. He states finding value in this personal motivation is the first lesson the academy offers them. Akuta celebrates the start of this new stage, preparing students for the challenge coming next. With a sword movement, the director teleports all students to an open field. Haruto appears suddenly in the new scenery, still surprised by the magnitude of the technique used. The student group finds themselves under a beautiful flowering tree, while Akuta observes them from afar. The director congratulates students for official entry into the institution, maintaining a confident demeanor. Students celebrate, commenting enthusiastically about the honor of receiving encouragement from the Blade Emperor himself. Everyone realizes, euphoric, that the man guiding them is the renowned and powerful Blade Emperor. Haruto reacts in shock, confirming the identity of the man who has been his mysterious mentor. He recognizes Akuta is the symbol of an entire era and the greatest existing hunter. Akuta looks at Haruto with a smile, as if knowing exactly what the boy is thinking. Haruto regrets not discovering his master's true identity much earlier. The group is led to the building of Class 3, where they will have practical classes. Students comment animatedly about the Blade Emperor's incredible presentation in the auditorium. Haruto enters the building, feeling slightly lost before the immensity of the school's facilities. An authoritative instructor orders everyone to settle quickly into their seats. Kusabi introduces himself as the teacher responsible for the class, specialized in shikigami manipulation. Students whisper about the teacher, suspecting he belongs to the famous Kusabi family of onmyoges. Female students comment on the teacher's elegant appearance, curious about his personal life. Kusabi takes the floor to explain the fundamental purpose of everyone at Togoko Academy. He warns that to practice the dangerous profession of hunter, official certification will be necessary. Kusabi warns about mortal risks faced daily battling terrible demons. The teacher details required subjects like swordsmanship and martial arts, which must be mastered. He warns obtaining these certifications is a mandatory requirement for graduation. Some students show confidence, but Haruto continues observing everything with great attention. Kusabi invites everyone to follow him, promising to reveal in practice what obtaining certification means. They arrive at a field where several stone pillars are lined up, awaiting the test. The instructor explains the goal of the exam is to create and control a shikigami to destroy the pillar. Kusabi notes that although the test is advanced for the first day, he will authorize graduation in case of success. Students face the challenge with optimism, believing basic manipulation will be enough to win. The student concentrates spiritual energy in a paper, preparing to summon his shikigami in the certification exam. He smiles confidently, declaring he will be the first to conclude the stone pillar destruction test. With a quick movement, the student throws his summoned creature against the target positioned ahead. The shikigami hits the pillar with violent impact, but the target remains intact without any scratch. The stone pillar stands firm, completely ignoring the force of the attack received by the student. Kusabi observes the scene and informs students there is no time limit or trial limit for the exam. Frustrated, students react with despair, ready to try again as tension rises in the field. Haruto watches his peers failing repeatedly, noting everyone is using low-level shikigamis. He reflects basic skills taught in ordinary schools seem insufficient to pass the academy test. Haruto attentively analyzes the summoning paper he holds, clearly lost on how to proceed with the task. The colleague notices Haruto's hesitation and asks if he doesn't intend to make his attempt now. Embarrassed, Haruto admits he has never created a shikigami before, leaving his colleague perplexed by the statement. He asks the student for help, wanting to learn basic fundamentals to manage to perform the summoning. The student agrees to teach the basics to Haruto, although looking slightly confused by his lack of preparation. In the background, students remain exhausted and panting, complaining about the extreme difficulty of destroying columns. The student who failed points at the pillar, indignant that not even his blade of manifestation can damage it. Kusabi holds a new summoning paper, explaining true hunters do not fight only with weapons. He demonstrates onmyojutsu serves to complement gaps the blade alone cannot supply. The teacher summons a majestic white tiger, revealing the standard of excellence expected from a graduate. The shikigami destroys the stone pillar with a single agile blow, impressing all present students. Kusabi emphasizes something as simple as that technique should be natural for anyone aspiring to be a hunter. He questions students if they really thought just entering the academy would make them hunters automatically. The teacher reiterates only those persisting until graduation will reach the goal, demanding full effort. He warns they need to obtain 6 certifications to advance a grade, advising them to use time well. Kusabi reflects his role as teacher is to destroy illusions of those lacking necessary determination. Haruto finally manages to summon a small rabbit, enthusiastically celebrating his first spiritual creation. The teacher observes the scene, remembering a previous request to look after Haruto with attention. Haruto hugs the small rabbit, completely enchanted by the cuteness of his first invocation. Kusabi looks at the scene with a mix of disappointment and disbelief, seeing the bunny in the protagonist's arms. Other distracted students also start summoning small harmless animals instead of combat shikigamis. The teacher completely dismisses their effort, declaring invocations of that type are out of the question. Kusabi reprimands the class. Frustrated Haruto is contaminating other students with his carefree attitude. He ends the day's class, ordering everyone to concentrate and organize priorities immediately. Haruto walks around campus, aware he needs to memorize the academy map before regular classes start. The colleague approaches and questions Haruto about the reason for his defeated expression facing the map. Noticing Haruto's demeanor, the young man comments at his bad manners to make faces meeting someone. Haruto remembers the guy attacked him for no reason in the past, but the other insists on forgetting such trivialities. The student asks if Haruto is also looking for his dorm, revealing both share the need. Haruto confirms he still needs to choose where he will live, surprising the colleague with his lack of organization. The guy criticizes Haruto's inattention, stating resolving basic housing issues should be obvious. Haruto confesses he was sleeping in a cramped storage room, contenting himself with basics to survive. The colleague insists if Haruto wants to be a hunter, he urgently needs to put his life in order. He reminds Haruto the Blade Emperor himself recommended him, an honor he should respect. The guy asks Haruto to stop the pathetic behavior so as not to stain the reputation of who recommended him. Haruto walks thoughtfully, still trying to process the fact of receiving support from the legendary master. The colleague observes him, genuinely surprised Haruto is someone so oblivious to his own potential. The student regrets wasting time trying to approach Toya, seeing in Haruto a more promising target. He wonders how someone as inattentive as Haruto got a recommendation from such a grand master. The colleague deduces Haruto must possess absurd latent potential, even being unable to summon anything useful. He decides to bet all his chips on Haruto, believing being his ally will guarantee his own bright future. Haruto decides to look for a dorm when Inari appears and approaches him enthusiastically. Inari introduces himself with a confident gesture, greeting Haruto as a new acquaintance. Inari notices Haruto's confusion and promptly offers to help him with his difficulties. Both agree destiny united them in the same class and decide to walk the path as friends. Haruto beams for making a new friend right on his first day. Haruto confesses he was having trouble choosing where to live, while Inari downplays the difference between dorms. Inari receives a notification on his phone and screams in surprise, seeing it is a message from Akuta Kaname. Akuta recommends that Tsukumo dorm for Haruto through a direct message. Both are shocked to confirm the Blade Emperor himself is personally interested in Haruto's destiny. Inari encourages Haruto to check the location immediately. Deciding to accompany him on the journey, they walk to the indicated address, feeling an intimidating presence coming from the location. Inari screams in terror upon being surprised by a sudden movement in the environment. Haruto turns quickly, trying to identify the cause of the shouting and panic of his friend. They come across a bottle of sake being thrown in their direction. Coming out of nowhere, a red-haired woman appears sitting, commenting on the arrival of another scrawny newbie. Haruto asks who she is, to which the woman dryly replies, she is the dorm caretaker. Haruto looks at the dorm structure, barely seeing it due to dense ivy vegetation. They explain they were recommended to live there, leaving Inari confused about his own presence. The caretaker questions if Haruto is really the boy Akuta Kaname mentioned previously. Inari is even more astounded hearing the woman call the legendary master simply by name. The woman ignores their reaction and demands they perform a magic trick to prove their worth. She claims to be the owner of the place and declares she will only allow entry to anyone managing to impress her. She places the sake bottle on the floor and warns if the trick is boring, there will be serious consequences. With frightening coldness, she threatens to break a bone of anyone failing, making it clear it's no bluff. She demonstrates her strength, destroying part of the wooden box where she was sitting with claws. Haruto finally understands why the previous student fled the dorm desperately. Inari panics, suggesting they retreat from there before anything terrible happens to them. Haruto, however, deduces if Akuta recommended the place, something valuable must be hidden behind that madness. Determined, Haruto accepts the challenge, ignoring Inari's protests about the caretaker's dangers. The caretaker selects Inari to try the trick first, forcing him to face fear. She pressures Inari, asking if he will have the courage to perform the task, or if he will give up. Inari accepts the challenge reluctantly, asking Haruto not to blame him for the tragic outcome. Inari uses a knife to slice cabbage, trying to show his culinary skills as a trick. He stays calm while cooking, trying to impress the caretaker with his dishes. The dish is ready and Inari presents with all the enthusiasm he can gather. The caretaker tastes the food with disdain, maintaining a tense silence while evaluating. Inari tries to explain, saying he can prepare snacks all day if she desires. To both surprise, the caretaker approves Inari's effort and allows him to pass. She turns her attention to Haruto, ordering him to show what he is capable of doing. The caretaker demands Haruto demonstrate his skills with the blade as a test. She jumps far away, positioning herself on a flowering tree while Haruto watches her. She holds a flower petal, preparing the final challenge for the protagonist. The caretaker warns the petal contains omyojutsu, and he will pass if he manages to cut it before touching the ground. Inari thinks the challenge is too severe, but Haruto accepts the test, willing to try. The petal falls slowly while Haruto positions himself to perform the precise cut. The caretaker thinks of Akuda, demanding the dorm take good care of the youth after the test. She observes Haruto's determination, admitting Akuda's requests tend to be problematic. With a sadistic smile, she decides to complicate the process, hoping Haruto suffers to succeed. The caretaker charges at Haruto, turning the test into actual combat between the two. Haruto understands if he wants to be a hunter, he needs to deal with unpredictable and lethal situations. Haruto executes a quick vertical movement with his blade, channeling all his energy into the attack. The petal is sliced with absolute precision, while Haruto remains in a firm posture after impact. Inari celebrates the friend's success, confessing he couldn't follow Haruto's fast movement. Haruto shows the petal cut into 2 perfect pieces, leaving Inari completely open-mouthed. The caretaker observes the scene in silence, processing the skill demonstrated by the boy. The petal was enveloped in spiritual energy, making the cut an extremely challenging task. The caretaker recognizes Haruto possesses incredible vision for hitting the target without losing focus. She notes, impressed, that no other surrounding petal was damaged by the protagonist's blow. She approves Haruto, commenting his way of overcoming challenges resembles Akuda Kanam's student period. Haruto shares his excitement with Inari, feeling turbulent days await both at the academy. The caretaker instructs Haruto to seek the true power of his blade as fast as possible. The sun rises on the academy campus, marking the start of a new day of learning. Haruto leaves his room, ready to proceed with programmed activities. He finds Inari, who is already wearing an apron, helping the caretaker with morning chores. Haruto questions the friend's outfit, who replies with pride that he helped prepare coffee. Haruto asks where other students are, being informed they are still sleeping. The two sit down for a hearty breakfast, thanking for the prepared meal. Haruto comments how good it is to have company, although Inari is visibly exhausted from effort. Haruto seizes the opportunity to ask something bothering him quite a bit. He questions Inari about how to establish communication with the being living inside his blade. Haruto recalls the experience he had talking briefly with the entity in his mental world. The entity had mentioned the connection was weak and disappeared right after the initial meeting. Inari explains various stages are necessary before managing to converse with the blade. He suggests they look for Professor Urashizaya, a specialist obsessed with blades of manifestation. Haruto agrees to speak with the master at the end of the blade studies class. Physical enhancement classes start early, with intense training for students. Students run through a challenging obstacle course under the watchful eyes of instructors. A female monitor encourages the class, stressing the level of resistance demanded of them is superhuman. Inari complains about difficulty, saying it's easy for her to talk while he struggles with weights. He explains all his energy is concentrated on sustaining the weight devices he carries. Haruto crosses the finish line, demonstrating superior speed compared to other colleagues. The instructor praises Haruto's time, but criticizes the lack of economy in his movements. She warns excessively depending on spiritual energy will end up stagnating his long-term progress. Haruto and the others collapse to the ground, completely exhausted after the grueling exercise. Haruto reflects on how rewarding it is to be treated like an ordinary student instead of a freak. Analyzing his record, the instructor encourages him to absorb all available knowledge at the academy. She increases pressure on the class, ordering 10 more laps around the circuit for slow students. The afternoon is dedicated to classes on blade theory and philosophy in the main building. An experienced professor begins the lecture, defining the discipline as the second philosophy of life. Inari fights off sleep during the explanation, trying to process the theories about gods and spirits. The monotony of the class, after the morning's military training, leaves all the students sleepy. Haruto watches the teacher as Inari nearly faints from exhaustion at his desk. Haruto feels he has finally found the place he always wanted to be, even if the others are tired. Inari notices the determination in Haruto's eyes and assures him that he will do very well. Inari suggests that they form their own team, maintaining their enthusiasm despite the demanding routine. Finally, the two run to Professor Urashizaya to clear up their remaining doubts. They approach the professor, who agrees to walk with them while they discuss the gods of swords. Urashizaya demonstrates genuine enthusiasm for the curious questions from the new students. The teacher keeps asking questions about Haruto's experience, leaving the young people confused. Inari finds the master's excessive excitement strange as he rushes off to hear more details. Haruto confirms that the sword god instructed him to manifest the true power of his blade. The professor reveals that his curiosity led him to test Haruto personally to better understand this potential. He explains that Haruto's connection is weak and that direct use of the blade is the fastest method of evolution. The teacher leads Haruto and Inari to a specific location within the academy to take the test. They enter enhanced training with spiritual barriers, prepared to withstand the certification exam. The professor presents a mechanical dummy that will serve as an opponent for Haruto's test. He explains that the automaton was built using advanced Amiyajutsu techniques to simulate real combat. The professor instructs Haruto to insert his manifestation blade into the slot located on the dummy's back. Haruto obeys and attaches his weapon, feeling a strange vibration emanating from the mechanism. The boy panics when he realizes that his spiritual energy is being drained by the structure. The professor explains that the dummy analyzes the absorbed energy to create an opponent that matches the user's strength. He adds that defeating this mechanical copy is the final requirement of the slide study exam. The puppet comes to life and assumes an aggressive fighting stance, forcing Haruto to react quickly. Inari questions whether it is safe to conduct the exam in this way, but the instructor assures him that everything is under control. The professor points out that Haruto achieved first place in the entrance exams and defeated an elite demon. Inari is shocked to discover that Haruto is actually much stronger than Ritoji Toya. The professor admits that he is interested in studying the nature of the blade that Haruto carries with him. He confesses to being desperate to discover the mystery hidden in the weapon chosen by the Emperor of Blades. Inari realizes that the professor always knew the reason for her excessive closeness to Haruto. The master wishes good luck, eager to observe how the mechanical puppet will handle Haruto's power. A barrier seals the enclosure, preventing any remaining energy from leaking out of the room. The doll moves with impressive speed, attacking Haruto while the boy is still trying to defend himself. A dark and dense aura surrounds the mechanical opponent after the combat system is fully activated. Haruto is thrown against the wall by the brute force of the attack executed by the puppet. The automaton has a fragile appearance, but the professor points out that its functionality is extremely useful. Haruto gets up, stunned by the unexpected aggression, immense strength of his opponent. The doll repositions itself, revealing a more imposing form, ready for direct confrontation. The professor watches with fascination as the puppet analyzes and replicates Haruto's techniques with perfection. Haruto senses an evil presence emanating from the doll, confirming that the fight will be deadly. He recognizes that the entity inside the doll perfectly replicates the essence of a terrible enemy. Inari watches in horror as he realizes that the doll has manifested something that resides within Haruto's own blade. The mechanical creature stares at Haruto, ready to deliver the final blow as he hesitates. Inari and the professor watch the scene, without being able to interfere in the unfolding duel. The dummy unleashes a claw strike that shatters part of the training hall's structure. The dark energy causes an explosion that launches Haruto to the other side of the arena. Haruto loses his balance and falls, surrounded by Rebel and the oppressive pressure of his opponent. Inari shouts for Haruto and the teacher, fearing the worst in the face of her friend's imminent defeat. The puppet pauses for a moment, demanding that the environment remain in absolute silence. He criticizes Haruto's weakness, stating that if he continues to teeter on the brink of death, his goal will never be achieved. The teacher urges Haruto to learn how to use raw power with his own body. The entity demands total focus, warning that any mental distraction will result in a humiliating defeat. Haruto advances with renewed determination, ignoring his exhaustion to attack the automaton's blind spot. The entity mocks Haruto's hesitation, calling him a coward for looking away from the fight. The dummy counterattacks, creating a fissure in the ground with the force of the impact. Haruto retaliates with a fierce blow, showing no sign of mercy or retreat. The creature analyzes the host body, concluding that it is useful despite having several structural weaknesses. Haruto wonders if the puppet will self-destruct if they manage to extract the central core. The puppet notices the uncertainty and fear written on Haruto's face, laughing at his hesitation. The puppet's claws slice through the air, leaving a trail of destruction as they advance toward the protagonist. Haruto is seriously injured, but keeps his gaze fixed on victory, refusing to fall before the challenge. The mechanical doll threatens Haruto with a blow, promising to hit him at the next opportunity. Haruto reacts furiously, insulting the creature for its aggressive and manipulative behavior. He criticizes the caretaker for putting innocent people at risk with these dangerous challenges. The creature warns that it cannot waste time, because if it dissipates, the others present will die. Haruto channels his hatred and energy into a desperate attack, demanding that the puppet stop its threats. The clash between the forces generates a violent impact that shakes the entire training chamber. The doll activates a barrier, forcing Haruto to find a way to get around this solid defense. The creature mocks Haruto's slowness, asking who would wait for such a charged attack. The puppet tells Haruto to use his brain and find a more efficient way to win the fight. Haruto plans to hide a second slash within the trajectory of his first strike to surprise the target. He executes the hidden move, creating an opening in the opponent's mechanical defense. The three-finger-cutting claw strike is enhanced, but the essential energy does not cover the blade. He realizes he needs a more efficient power source to break through the barrier. The puppet suggests that it might be necessary to push Haruto to his extreme limit in order for him to awaken. Haruto ignores the absurd words and focuses on maintaining his fighting stance. The creature warns that hesitating during a battle only makes the opponent more dangerous. Haruto yells for her to stop, feeling the pressure of the fight rise dramatically. He charges at the puppet, determined to end the conflict once and for all. The doll warns that losing a friend will leave a mark of eternal loneliness and misery on your heart. Haruto, panting, feels the pain of remorse as he faces the possibility of failing Inari. The young man becomes enraged when provoked by the creature, which plays with his feelings. Haruto notices a crucial difference in his technique during that moment of clarity. He realizes, to his surprise, that he managed to cut through the barrier, even without accumulating that much spiritual energy. Haruto wonders what has changed in the way he handles the manifestation blade. The dummy advises him to go on the offensive, reminding him that protection is only possible if the enemy is defeated. Haruto ignores the advice and fiercely advances, determined to forge his own path. He hits the dummy with a precise blow that pierces its defensive layers. The dummy laughs at the impact, finding the blow too light to cause real damage. He orders Haruto to concentrate if he truly wants to survive the confrontation. Haruto delivers the final blow, putting all his conviction into the tip of his sword. The doll is destroyed by the energy wave, turning into metallic wreckage. The dummy questions how Haruto managed to unleash so much power by performing such simple movements. He criticizes Haruto for wasting energy, warning that inefficient use will cause a collapse soon. Haruto seeks to understand how to eliminate wasted energy by reflecting on his posture and fluidity. He begins to adjust the energy flow within his own body to optimize attacks. The dummy attempts a new counterattack, but Haruto moves with elegance and precision. Haruto maintains an advantageous position, ready to deliver another decisive blow. The dummy tests Haruto's consistency, doubting that he can repeat the feat again. Haruto prepares himself, determined to prove that his growth was not just a momentary stroke of luck. He unleashes a cutting technique that fragments the scenery around the mechanical opponent. Haruto finally understands that the secret lies not in storing energy, but in guiding it. Energy should flow like a waterfall capable of shattering rocks instead of remaining stagnant. He realizes that enveloping the body in energy is inefficient. It should focus only on the vital points. Haruto maintains awareness of the flow as he relentlessly pursues the puppet. He distributes energy between his danchin back, shoulders, and hands, optimizing his attack power. Energy flows freely to the tips of your fingers, energizing the blade. Haruto unleashes the technique, creating a spatial rift with the power of his blade. The dummy tries to erect a triple barrier to protect itself from the devastating onslaught. Haruto maintains absolute focus, ignoring any distraction that might throw him off balance. He ends the test with the three-finger-cutting claw, pulverizing the remains of the mechanical dummy. Haruto unleashes a devastating blow that cuts through the air with extreme violence. He manages to completely destroy the impenetrable barrier of the test dummy. A mysterious voice explains that the localized concentration of energy is the basis of everything. The entity reveals that it has finally met the requirements to unleash true power. Haruto watches his blade vibrate intensely, not understanding what is happening. Suddenly, he is sucked into a purple rift that appears before his eyes. The young man awakens in his own mental world before a terrifying giant eye. The colossal being claims that it can now finally reveal its true purpose. He introduces himself as Mutant and says he is looking for someone who wields a special blade. Mutant reveals he is looking for a man wielding a sword with a translucent blade. Confused by the revelation, Haruto questions why they are looking for him. He is shocked to hear that Mutant's mission is to eliminate this person. The monster considers that perhaps he doesn't need to kill him if he can forgive his actions. Haruto agrees to search for the mysterious man on the condition that a promise is kept. He demands that the people around him never again be put in danger. Mutant accepts the deal but warns that the boy will need to become much stronger. The creature says that this is its destiny as the test dummy falls apart. Haruto returns to reality and stares at the wreckage of the doll lying on the ground. Professor Urushizeya suddenly appears and surprises him from behind with a hug. The master explains that the gods of the blades always seek to dialogue with their wielders. He reflects silently on how easily that entity took over his body. The professor notices the sinister energy and knows he would have to fight if it weren't a training session. Haruto sadly apologizes for hurting Inari, his first friend. The teacher reassures him, saying that he did well and that his colleague will understand. He ponders the shadows hanging over the academy and the young man's fate. The professor senses that something dangerous is about to happen very soon. While helping the wounded Inari, the master senses the gears of fate turning. A disturbing feeling pervades the world as hidden forces begin to take hold. Sometime later, the normal classroom routine resumes with everyone gathered in the room. Inari whispers to Haruto, curious to know the result of the certification test. Haruto says he passed the practical test, but needs to submit the written report. Inari is extremely impressed to learn that his friend managed to pass. The protagonist apologizes for putting him in danger, but his friend tells him to relax. Haruto feels emotional and sincerely thanks everyone for their unconditional support. Inari celebrates having come out of that situation well and still having his friendship. The professor of demonology warns that real combat training will begin soon. He orders the students to form groups of 3 to go to the training area. Haruto and Inari realize they need to find one more member to complete the group. They look around worriedly, while all the other students are already getting organized. The two fear they have run out of options when someone unexpected approaches the table. A girl with purple hair asks if there are still spots available in the group, and Haruto accepts. The trio arrives at the special training center where demons and Shikigami await them. The group's objective is to defeat all threats inside and protect the building. The test for Group 8 officially begins as soon as they enter the combat area. Inari is excited about the teamwork while the girl asks Haruto not to do everything solo. Haruto assures that he will cooperate and says that he is counting on Funo's help. Funo smiles gently and thanks his teammate for his consideration. Inari asks what type of ability she has, and Funo says it's fire-based. She explains that her specialty is support, and Inari suggests they move forward together. Inari asks Haruto to take care of scouting the area, and the boy agrees. Inari tries to act confidently and takes the lead in attacking the demons that appear. Haruto notices more enemies approaching and decides to go upstairs to investigate. Inari is startled at being left behind but resigns himself to it, not wanting them to see Haruto's strength. He takes on the responsibility of cleaning the first floor and asks Funo to cover for him. The boy prepares himself with determination and activates his flames, yelling to awaken them. He unleashes a devastating flaming attack to incinerate the flying opponent. The heat is excessive and the girl complains, frightened, asking him to lower the intensity. Funo apologizes and says he will increase his speed to face the new enemies. She conjures a swift wind spell that envelops the entire body of her combat ally. The sudden increase in speed causes Inari to crash face first into the wall. Lying on the ground, he questions whether she overdid with the power and realizes that speed in enclosed spaces is dangerous. Funo apologizes and promises to change strategy to focus solely on providing fire cover. She unleashes a strong gust of wind that ends up hitting her own teammate. Inari dodges the glancing attack and is exhausted from the danger he just passed. Funo tells him to hold on tight while the boy begins to suspect her behavior. He strongly suspects that the girl's clumsy actions are being done on purpose. Funo remains shrouded in a mysterious aura while hiding his own face. She smiles slightly and murmurs to herself that faking an accident is harder than she imagined. Inari notices the malicious intent and angrily asks what she is really planning. The girl claims she has nothing against him and doesn't even care to know his name. She asks him to pass out for a few days so she can train alone with Haruto tomorrow. Funo prepares himself and points his sword, channeling the dangerous wind needle technique. The young man is shocked to realize the level of obsession and madness of that mysterious girl. Faced with the imminent threat, he takes a step back and prepares to fight seriously. Inari decides that if she acts like an enemy, he will not hesitate to defeat her in combat. He tries to use her wind to his advantage to strengthen his own flames and counterattack. The boy thinks that because she's a support type, she probably doesn't have much of a real fighting spirit. He is confident of his victory and tells the girl to be quiet while he prepares the final attack. Suddenly, a huge amount of water surges out of nowhere and extinguishes its flames completely. The young man ends up completely soaked and defeated on the ground. Without understanding what happened, Funo explains, laughing, that water extinguishes fire and that she can use Omiyajutsu to circumvent the elements. He is terrified to realize that she is much stronger using magic than with her own sword. She smiles grimly and warns that the confrontation between the two has just ended. Funo conjures an overwhelming water attack, leaving the opponent with no chance of defense. At that moment, the ceiling suddenly collapses, creating a huge cloud of smoke and debris. The girl interrupts her attack in fright, but she sees that the ceiling of the room has collapsed. Haruto emerges from the rebel, leaving Inari extremely relieved by his arrival. Funo instantly changes his posture to feign innocence and screams for help. She smiles happily and thanks Haruto, saying she's happy to have been saved again. The protagonist becomes very confused by the comment and begins to suspect the situation. Haruto asks if by any chance they didn't meet during the third academy exam. Funo is overjoyed to be remembered while Inari cries because she looks like a different person. She reveals that she worked hard to completely change her look because of Haruto. Funo timidly asks if she looks pretty, and the young man awkwardly replies that she does. Inari tries to get their attention from afar, but is completely ignored by the pair. Funo apologizes to Haruto, saying that his magic accidentally dissipated. She praises the protagonist for defeating the great demon boss of the training. Inari desperately regrets realizing that she ended up in the group of someone crazy. Funo suggests they go do the final report while their colleague cries from exhaustion. The team's training finally comes to an end as night falls on the academy building. Inari and Haruto walk down the dormitory hallway, chatting about how tiring today was. The boy tries to hide it, but soon decides to admit that he had problems with Funo's behavior. Suddenly, Funo herself silently appears behind his shoulder, asking what they were talking about. Inari is startled and asks what she's doing there, but the girl reveals that she also lives in the same dormitory. He is suspicious of the coincidence and remembers seeing her watching him during the entrance exam. To prevent him from revealing more details, the girl abruptly covers her classmate's mouth with a smile. She whispers a veiled threat, making it clear that he will suffer the consequences if he tells anyone. Haruto observes the whole confusing scene, not understanding why the two are acting so strangely. Trying to quickly change the subject, Inari suggests that everyone exchange contact information since they are now a group. Haruto happily agrees, finally realizing his dream of exchanging contact information with friends. The young man smiles and says he is looking forward to working as a team with his new teammates the next day. While the two whisper mutual threats of rivalry, Haruto believes they have already become great friends. The following day, the group begins their demon extermination training in an abandoned hospital in the area. The instructor warns that they will face real enemies and introduces a professional hunter to assist them. The professional hunter lazily introduces himself as Ozuchi and greets the young students. The students become extremely agitated and excited upon recognizing the famous demon hunter. Haruto is confused because he doesn't know him, and Inari is astonished by her friend's complete lack of information. Inari explains that the man is an elite hunter who had the highest number of demon kills last year. Ozuchi suddenly appears right behind them, whispering that this record isn't all that impressive. He explains that having many kills only means that he spent all his time fighting weak enemies. Everyone is startled by his speed, and the instructor demands that the students stop talking and pay attention. The master requests absolute silence to continue giving important instructions for field training. Ozuchi stares closely at Haruto and praises his sharp eyes for being able to keep up with his quick movements. The instructor resumes the explanation, stating that each group will receive a position on the hospital map. The detailed map of the location is displayed, and the objective of everyone is to eliminate any threat in the designated area. The professional hunter earnestly warns against letting their guard down, as the danger of death there is real. To motivate them, he promises to pay for a barbecue feast for the team that performs best overall. Haruto starts drooling just thinking about the food, while Inari realizes that her friend has been hooked by the promise. Group 8 is tasked with cleaning the 5th and 6th floors of the west wing of the hospital and sets out into action. As soon as they enter the building, the protagonist senses that the sinister energy of the environment is much stronger. The little demon mutant materializes, floating right above the head of the white-haired youth. Haruto is startled by the sudden appearance, and the small creature explains that it smelled a monster nearby. Mutant observes the scene and deduces that someone is artificially creating a spiritual rift outside. The protagonist questions the little monster about how demonic creatures managed to invade the human world. The little creature mocks his ignorance, and Haruto angrily tells him to shut up at the provocation. He explains that the negative energy generated by human actions serves as a vessel to summon demons. The accumulation of this bad energy creates dangerous areas, facilitating the emergence of much more powerful monsters. Mutin calls the white-haired boy's attention and tells him to look out the window to see something important. The young man observes the sky and spots an immense magic circle of barrier hovering above the hospital building. Mutant explains that this barrier serves to control the density of the spirit rift and attract weak monsters. Haruto understands how the system works and praises the little monster's vast knowledge of the world. Meanwhile, the professional hunter wanders, lost through the corridors, trying to find his way around the hospital. He decides to check the map to be sure, while the students bravely fight a demon in the hallway. The man attentively observes the agile movements and blows delivered by the young men against the monster. He warns them that they were reckless and they need to broaden their perspective in order to survive longer. The injured students apologize with their heads bowed to thank the professional for the valuable advice given. On the hospital roof, the instructor uses his spiritual techniques to guide and support the training. He suggests that Ozuchi provide moral support for young people instead of just observing from a distance. The hunter replies that maintaining a wide field of vision is part of the posture of a true elite professional. He then questions the instructor about when he started teaching and what happened to the former teacher. The instructor explains that the substitute teacher wasn't feeling well and the principal asked him to take over. Yuma questions why he was specifically chosen to help with today's supervision. The man ponders how to explain the real reason for his great concern about the place. The master remembers a day when he saw 3 birds perched in an unusual line on the window. That sight caught his attention, but he chose to ignore the bad feeling that something would go wrong. That same day, he ended up losing 3 dear friends during a real extermination mission. Since then, he has become very attentive to small details and wanted to call the most qualified hunter. Yuma understands the situation and jokes that if everything goes well, they can have a drink together later. He recognizes the incredible strength of the Kaname brothers, but knows he shouldn't ignore the director's intuition. The hunter reflects that class number 3 already has enough mysteries and problems of its own. He thinks about Haruto and notices that the boy has good friends and is unlikely to lose his way. Yuma begins to compare them to someone from the past, but is interrupted by the instructor's desperate cry. He asks for calm and advises the master not to let personal feelings influence his current judgment. Meanwhile, Haruto warns his colleagues that a mid-level demon is heading their way. A gigantic red creature bursts through the ceiling and violently charges toward the two. Inari asks to work as a team, but Funo complains, demanding that he be the first to cooperate. The two are extremely determined to prove themselves, so that Haruto will finally acknowledge them. They attack the monster together while arguing, begging each other not to interfere with their charge. The protagonist is surprised by their focus and thinks they must really want that barbecue. On the roof of the building, a mysterious man in a straw hat observes everything and plans a great massacre. The enemy draws his sword, gleaming with lightning, and prepares to deliver a devastating blow. He attacks furiously, completely destroys the containment barrier that regulated the hospital. The impact is so strong that everyone on site feels the terrifying spiritual vibration immediately. Inari and Funo spot a shadowy presence emerging from a room and prepare to confront the danger. Suddenly, a huge wall collapses on the girl, burying her in the middle of the hallway. Inari screams for her in fright as a huge, multi-headed creature emerges from the rubble. Haruto appears at high speed and delivers a precise cut, eliminating the monster before it can attack. The creature is defeated in the blink of an eye, and the young man runs to check if his colleague is injured. Funo recovers from the shock and wonders if that creature was also of an intermediate level. They realize that this opponent was different from the others. As the emergency alarm begins to sound, the master announces that someone has destroyed the control barrier, and the danger level in the area has greatly increased. The master warns that he will send support Shikigami and orders everyone to focus solely on surviving the attack. Inari is terrified by the announcement, and Funo suggests they just hold out until the teachers help them. Mutant appears and warns Haruto that the area is overrun by miasma and terrible demons will appear. He earnestly warns that a much higher-level spiritual entity is about to emerge. The little monster reveals with terror that a higher-class demon is approaching their location. The master repeats the warning over the sound system, insisting that all groups remain on the defensive. Exhausted after the battle, they try to catch their breath while Haruto orders them to keep their guard up. The white-haired boy watches the hallway, waiting for the support Shikigami promised by the master. Suddenly, a huge monster breaks through the window and attacks the protagonist with overwhelming violence. Inari screams in despair as he sees his friend being attacked, and Haruto orders Funo to focus on the enemy. The giant demon emanates a terrifying purple pressure typical of a high-level beast. Funo refuses to back down and states with determination that he doesn't need anyone to tell him what to do. The monster roars furiously as the girl prepares to cast her water magic against the target. She uses her snake rain technique to try and blind the giant demon for a few seconds. Taking advantage of the opening created by her ally, Inari quickly advances, unleashing a powerful fire attack. However, the monster's skin proves too tough, and its fire blade encounters extreme resistance. Haruto suddenly appears and executes his claw-cutting technique, tearing off the giant opponent's arm. The young man is overjoyed to realize that he had successfully executed the haste perfectly, just as he had planned. Funo falls to her knees, exhausted but extremely relieved to see that her teammate is safe. Inari praises the boy for his feat, but he humbly says that it all happened thanks to the distraction created by his friends. Inari is relieved to have helped, although he feels that Haruto's growth is happening too fast. Suddenly, the group hears heavy footsteps approaching and realizes that someone very strong is coming. Hunter Ozochi appears at the door, casually commenting that he seems to have arrived a little late. He apologizes for the delay and informs them that they are the last of the group, telling them to follow him to the courtyard. In the outer courtyard, Instructor Kusabi tries to maintain order and demands that all students be quiet. He explains that the control barrier was destroyed on purpose, and that there are many high-level monsters inside. The master warns that the beasts will be attracted by the students' ascent, and Funo suggests they retreat immediately. Ozuchi throws a stone and warns dejectedly that the mysterious opponent has no intention of letting them escape. Outside the hospital, a huge purple energy rift begins to rise, completely isolating the area. The professional explains that it is a cursed barrier that regenerates instantly if attacked. Inari panics, but the instructor asks for calm, stating that the outside world must have already noticed the anomaly. He says everyone will be fine as long as they maintain their defense, but asks the experienced hunter for his opinion. Ozuchi suddenly turns to Haruto and asks if the young man is capable of facing a high-level opponent. He orders the protagonist to stay in the courtyard, helping the instructor protect the less experienced students. The instructor protests the sudden decision, but the man explains that he needs to hunt down the summoner of the barrier. Ozochi points out that a spiritual blockage of this magnitude requires the person responsible to be hidden inside. He summarizes that the simplest and most efficient strategy is to find the guilty enemy and eliminate them at once. The hunter calls out firmly to Haruto, and the boy responds promptly, demonstrating great courage. The master says he agrees with the plan, but warns the young man with white hair about the real risk of death. Haruto accepts the dangerous mission without hesitation, stating that he will do anything to ensure everyone's lives. The instructor is amazed by the boys' quick determination and grants them permission to leave. The master uses his powerful prison tiger summoning technique to isolate and protect the students. Ozuchi places his hand on the young man's shoulder, reminding him that besides being a teacher, he is also a hunter and that this will be good training. The hunter leaves the protection of the courtyard in the instructor's hands and moves on, accompanied by the protagonist. He mentally recalls the details of the previous rescue and how he assessed the boy's combat potential. The man acknowledges that in a one-one duel, Haruto truly possesses the necessary strength to defeat a powerful demon. Outside the barrier, the demons advance fiercely while the instructor orders them to maintain focus on defense. The beasts summoned by the master violently clash with the monsters that try to invade the students' area. Meanwhile, Haruto and the professional hunter race swiftly towards the location of the terrifying summoner. The protagonist draws his blade, preparing for the inevitable deadly combat that is about to begin. The students comment in surprise on the boy's incredible strength in defeating a high-level opponent single-handedly. Haruto believes he didn't win alone and values the excellent support he received from his teammates. He reflects on the stark difference in skill level and understands the true power of a real elite hunter. Suddenly, an overwhelming chill takes over the entire environment, and an immense wave of purple energy descends. The protagonist feels the terrifying spiritual pressure and is on high alert as a monster approaches. The instructor notices the drastic change in the air and confirms that an extreme-level demon has just been born. A gigantic and terrifying beast of superior class emerges from the top of the building, emanating rays of energy. The terrifying demon smirks, commenting that he smells a delicious scent of human spiritual energy in the air. He faces the mysterious straw-hatted villain on the roof, who mockingly asks if he liked the offering. The summoner says that he prepared that feast by attracting several hunters so that the creature could devour them. The creature questions whether man does not fear being betrayed and devoured by the very beast he helped bring to life. The villain calmly replies that he wouldn't have so much trouble if a monster of this caliber had already existed. At that moment in the conversation, Ozuchi appears, falling from the sky directly towards the top of the occupied building. The hunter lands gracefully and notes with disdain that a high-class demon has indeed appeared. He spots the person in charge of the barrier and thinks it would be excellent if he could capture the traitor alive. Ozuchi begins to walk calmly, completely ignoring the imposing presence of the gigantic purple creature. Irritated at being scorned, the monster roars angrily, ordering the human not to dare ignore him like that. In a swift and imperceptible movement, the hunter severs the giant demon's arm without the slightest physical effort. The hunter coldly warns that an insignificant beast of superior class should remain silent. The demon is shocked to have his arm cut off and realizes he has no chance of defeating the elite hunter. He decides to retreat temporarily and plans to devour the students in the courtyard to regain his strength. Ozuchi says he told the beast to be quiet and prepares to chase it before it escapes from the roof. However, mysterious currents suddenly appear in the air and bind the arms of the experienced professional hunter. The hidden summoner uses his magical chains to pull and restrain Ozuchi mid-charge, bound tightly by metal chains. The man struggles, unable to free himself from the restraint. He realizes too late that he made a grave mistake by falling into the trap set by the hat-wearing villain. The villain mocks the hero's arrogance and says he will slice him up to make it easier for the terrible monster to eat. The chains tighten brutally around the hunter, causing him to suffer severe cuts and begin to bleed. Ozuchi falls severely wounded from the top of the building, losing consciousness due to the surprise attack. The mysterious summoner watches him fall with disdain, questioning if he really thought he would capture him alive. He mockingly states that the professional hero was too pretentious for his own good in battle. The wounded man is thrown far away, too weak to continue fighting against the enemy's currents. The summoner celebrates and orders the high-class demon to begin its feast with the students immediately. The colossal purple monster lands violently in the courtyard and comes face to face with the terrified Haruto. The creature observes the white-haired boy very closely and says that he looks extremely appetizing. Haruto feels a pressure of pure malice that terrifies him far more intensely than the other monsters. The demon tries to bite Inari in a swift movement, saying that he only wants to taste a piece of the boy. At a crucial moment, Instructor Kusabi appears with his staff and blocks the deadly attack of the purple beast. He barely manages to withstand the impact and groans in pain as he feels the overwhelming force of the demon. The master faces the creature in fury, demanding to know who gave permission to threaten the lives of his students. The opponent takes a step back and realizes that this man has the same level of power as the wounded hunter from before. Inari trembles with terror, knowing he would have been devoured at that very moment if the master hadn't been there. Kusabi finds the whole situation strange and wonders how the monster managed to evade Ozuchi's vigilance. The hat-wearing villain mocks his concern and conjures a magical teleportation circle beneath the master's feet. Realizing the trap, Kusabi desperately yells at Haruto to hold on before being sent away. The students watch in horror as their strong teacher disappears from the courtyard in the blink of an eye. Haruto panics when his master disappears, but struggles to stay calm and react immediately. The demon smiles in relief as he sees that the only obstacle hindering his plans has disappeared from the combat area. He turns anxiously toward the surviving students, preparing to begin the terrible massacre. The beast opens its giant mouth wide, ready to devour the frightened victims trapped in the courtyard. Seeing that he is alone, Haruto decides that he needs to face the high-class demon on his own. The young man advances quickly, delivering a concentrated blow with his special absolute claw technique. He manages to cut off the giant opponent's arm with extreme ease and precision mid-movement. The boy recoils, panting, after the daring blow while the beast remains standing, staring intently at him in the courtyard. The monster praises the boy's sword power, stating that it almost reached his actual neck. Haruto is shocked to notice that the creature managed to dodge the fatal attack, even though it was so close. He watches in horror as the demon's newly severed arm is already regenerating instantly. The young man concludes that the opponent is trying to keep his distance to protect his neck, which is his only weak point. He prepares to attack again, convinced that there is a part of the monster's body that cannot regenerate. However, the demon moves at high speed and delivers a crushing blow that throws Haruto far away. The monster mocks the protagonist, stating that his sword is excellent, but that the wielder is merely mediocre. The young man hits the hard patio floor hard and groans in pain as he feels the severe damage caused by the impact. The beast is surprised that it failed to kill him and deduces that he concentrated his energy to avoid the fatal blow. The purple demon insults the young hunter, calling him insolent as it advances to end the resistance. Haruto struggles to get back on his feet in the rain as he prepares for the enemy's next attack. The monster unleashes a terrifying physical charge that shatters the ground around it, but narrowly misses its target. He becomes extremely frustrated when he fails again and wonders how the boy managed to escape his trap. The demon notices that the boy's eyes perfectly tracked his quick movements before looking away. The monster realizes that the young hunter is very troublesome and decides that it will eliminate him once and for all. Kusabi is teleported to the hospital roof and realizes that no allies are waiting to help him. He stares in horror at the blood-covered floor, hoping that his worst fears are not real. Suddenly, sharp metal chains emerge from the shadows and bind the arms of the Amyojutsu master. The magical bonds tighten around him with extreme violence, leaving the experienced professor completely immobilized. The master is perplexed to realize that he fell so easily into the ambush without having time to react. The mysterious summoner mockingly warns that he will also spill the instructor's blood on that very rooftop. Suddenly, Ozuchi appears, delivering a swift blow that cuts through the villain and destroys the chains that bound him. The hat-wearing enemy recoils, groaning in pain as he is struck by the professional hunter's surprise attack. Ozuchi rests his sword on his shoulder and greets his colleague Kusabi in a relaxed manner, asking if he is all right. The instructor thanks the instructor for the timely rescue, apologizing for allowing himself to be captured so carelessly. Kusabi notes that the wounds on the hunter's torso are covered by wood, attribute regeneration vines. The summoner recognizes the healing ability of Ozuchi's blade and is astonished to see that he survived the cut. The hunter explains that it took him a while to arrive because he was teleported to a point far from the hospital. Kusabi begs Ozuchi not to worry about him and to return immediately to support the students. The villain pulls out his chains again, laughing, and asks if they really think he'll let them leave. He mockingly states that the upper-class beast is savoring its meal with the victims down below. The summoner smiles sadistically, promising to keep them occupied on the roof until the massacre is complete. Instructor Kusabi becomes extremely enraged by the cruel provocation and curses his opponent with hatred in his eyes. Ozuchi calms his companion, asking him to ignore cheap provocations, and suggests they finish off the enemy together. The hunter considers that if the students are lucky, they will be able to resist alone for a maximum of 30 seconds. He tells the villain not to underestimate the young hunters, proudly stating that they are students of the prestigious academy. Meanwhile, Haruto struggles to dodge the giant demon's swift attacks and notices that it is too fast. The colossal beast hurls a huge rock toward the terrified students watching the battle. The protagonist realizes that the opponent's strength surpasses his own, and that without a clean strike, his attacks will be useless. He knows that if he continues to just defend himself, he will be defeated soon and needs to create an opening immediately. Suddenly, Funo reappears in the fight and conjures his wind needles to distract the purple monster. Next, Inari bravely steps forward and activates her flame attack to support her teammate. The two shout for Haruto, warning that they will provide cover and ask their friend to leave the rest to them. The protagonist becomes very concerned about their safety, knowing how dangerous that monster is. Inari retorts, saying that they are partners in the same group and that they can't just watch the fight without doing anything. He honestly acknowledges that the two of them don't have the power to harm the beast, but that they can help in other ways. Funo concludes by stating that at least they will be able to create a perfect distraction so that Haruto can attack. Trusting in the strategy of his loyal companions, Haruto shouts, asking for their immediate help in the arena. The giant demon underestimates Inari's fire barrier, claiming that the flames won't even be able to slow him down. However, Funo quickly conjures his rain of water serpents directly onto his colleagues' blazing flames. The violent clash between water and fire instantly generates a dense cloud of steam that blinds the monster. The creature scorns the intelligence of its opponents, failing to notice the real danger approaching from above the smoke. Haruto emerges, falling from a height amidst the thick steam, and advances determined to seize this single opportunity. The opponent attempts to deliver a fatal counter-attack blow, but is startled to realize he has only hit water. Funo smiles triumphantly, revealing that the target of the demon's attack was merely his magical water doll. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, the real Haruto reappears behind the monster, delivering a powerful slash. The allies watch anxiously as the immense explosion of energy consumes the body of the giant demon in the courtyard. The white-haired boy screams, concentrating all his spiritual strength to tear open the creature's chest. The monster staggers from the severe impact of the blow, but recovers with frightening speed and firmness. He counterattacks by throwing the protagonist away with a brutal and extremely violent physical movement. Inari panics when she sees that the demon's severed arm has regenerated before it even touches the courtyard floor. The beast displays an even more terrifying and monstrous appearance under the influence of its terrible energy. The deep wound heals completely in a few seconds, demonstrating the opponent's absurd vitality. The demon reflects that he has already been caught off guard by the boy 3 times, and that he shouldn't make any more silly mistakes. Overcome with humiliation, the monster unleashes colossal power and vows to annihilate the protagonist forever. The demon throws its own severed fist toward Funo to catch her by surprise in battle. The girl notices the rapid approach and tries to remain calm to dodge it, knowing it's just a distraction. Haruto senses the immediate danger and desperately shouts for his companion to dodge the attack. Suddenly, the fist thrown by the monster begins to glow intensely, about to cause an explosion. The thrown limb detonates violently, releasing an immense wave of overwhelming purple energy into the courtyard. The demon laughs sadistically, revealing its terrifying ability to explode parts of its own body. Funo is thrown far away and falls gravely wounded to the ground, realizing that the beast possesses a brutal ability. Thanks to the protagonist's quick warning, she managed to erect an Amyojutsu barrier and avert the worst. Haruto watches the scene in shock, seeing the weakened state and serious injuries his colleague suffered. The beast grins mockingly and announces that it is ready to claim its next victim in the academy's courtyard. The monster hurls another of its explosive limbs, aiming directly at the protagonist. Haruto considers dodging, but desperately realizes that the attack will explode directly into Inari. With no other options, the hero decides to take the blow head on to protect the life of his dear friend. The attack detonates with full force right in front of the boy, generating an immense flash of destructive energy. The protagonist is directly hit by the terrible explosion, suffering severe damage all over his body. The demon celebrates sordidly, stating that he knew the boy would sacrifice himself to protect his ally. A new, gigantic purple explosion consumes the entire area, leaving the scene completely completely destroyed. Inari screams in utter despair for his friend's name as he witnesses the devastating attack that struck him. The monster laughs loudly and arrogantly, commenting on how fragile human beings are. Lying on the ground and bleeding, Funo watches everything in absolute shock, unable to believe what she's seeing. Haruto lies fallen on the ground, completely covered in blood and unable to make any physical movement. In a panic, Inari runs to Funo and desperately asks if she possesses any spiritual healing techniques. The girl weakly replies that she is not a professional healer, but that she can perform small spells. The young man asks her to try to heal Haruto immediately, even if it's just enough for him to react. Inari draws his sword, determined to fight the monster to buy time, while she performs the healing. He knows that if Haruto can no longer fight, none of the students there will have a chance of getting out of there alive. The young man realizes that all the other students are paralyzed with fear and takes it upon himself to act alone. He yells at Funo to do his job quickly, because he knows he won't be able to hold out much longer. The girl cries, moved by her classmates' courage, and agrees to try to heal her friend as quickly as possible. Haruto laments to himself as he witnesses his friend's madness, knowing that this opponent is of a superior class. Inari challenges the beast, saying he will show the strength of a hunter, even if he is just an appetizer. He activates his special technique by creating flaming illusions of himself to confuse his opponent. However, the demon easily dodges, ridiculing the boy's slow movement and technique. The creature advances quickly, dismissing the trick, and focuses on attacking the student's real body. He immediately sees through Inari's camouflaged trick, deeming the effort a pointless folly. The monster recalls that the earlier explosion could have been easily avoided if the young man had been alone. He understands that Inari ended up being hit only because he chose to act as a shield for Haruto. Inari reflects in thought on his relationship with the hero, considering his friend a big, generous idiot. With his body ablaze, he vows to buy time and begs the protagonist not to die. Suddenly, the demon immobilizes the student and celebrates, having finally found his real body. The monster grabs him using the severed wrist from before that was hidden on the ground, surprising the young man. He brutally throws Inari to the ground, bringing a tragic end to the student's distraction plan. Haruto watches his friend's violent defeat in utter despair, unable to do anything to help him. The boy screams in agonizing pain as his body is brutally crushed by the beast's relentless force. He cries in pain, feeling like he's going to faint, and ironically regrets trying to act like a hero. The demon mocks his pathetic state, saying that his illusions immediately revealed his true position. He turns around, deciding that the first real sacrifice will be Haruto, the only one who managed to wound him in the fight. Seeing his friend in danger, Haruto becomes deeply enraged and begs his own body to move. However, Inari gets up again with difficulty, stating that the monster hasn't finished enjoying him yet. The wounded youth wields his sword with determination, challenging the fearsome beast to continue fighting him. The demon ridicules him, calling him pathetic, and asks if there's any point in fighting while trembling in pain and terror. Inari cries as she watches her blood drip onto the ground and admits that acting so heroically isn't really her style. He reflects that it would be a tremendous act of cowardice to abandon a friend who risked his own life to protect him. The young man screams furiously and, crying blood, affirms with all his determination that he has not fallen so low in life. Funo observes his ally's courage and realizes that entrusting everything to Haruto's power is the only logical choice. She understands that betting everything on the protagonist's strength is the best decision in that situation. Inari runs towards the monster, shouting that a once-in-a-lifetime gamble is something you should risk everything on. The beast scorns his determination and easily crushes him to the ground, destroying any attempt to react. The monster immobilizes the young man, claiming that it will fulfill his wish to be the first dish to be devoured. The terrifying demon opens its giant maw wide, laughing, and prepares to swallow the boy without any mercy. Haruto watches the scene in despair and tries to force his broken body to move quickly to save his friend. The protagonist panics, mentally begging his muscles to react much faster. In a cry of pure, utter despair, he commands his legs and arms to move once once and for all. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist reappears, delivering a swift blow that blocks the monster's gaping maw. The high-class demon is violently pushed back and is perplexed by the young man's speed. Haruto holds his wounded friend in his arms and sincerely thanks Inari for maintaining his unwavering faith. The monster is shocked to realize that the boy was able to cover that distance in a millisecond. With a cold stare and red eyes gleaming with fury, the young hunter vows to save his companion. Opponent notices that Haruto's sword blade has undergone a drastic change, emanating a sinister purple smoke. The voice of the mysterious entity echoes, explaining the reason he acquired the 10 claws of power. Mutant reveals that the true source of that hidden strength has always been the boy's intense desire to protect. In that instant of pure emotion and hatred, an immense torrent of dark energy begins to emanate from his sword. Ancient power awakens, and the protagonist prepares to unleash a new claw. Haruto desperately begs his own body to move even faster so he can beat the clock. He manages to dash at an extreme speed to grab and save his friend Inari from the fatal attack. The demon is in shock as it realizes that the color and shape of the young man's blade have suddenly changed. Haruto entrusts his wounded companion to Kano, who immediately agrees to help with his recovery. He wields his new weapon with focus and begins to grasp the mysterious power that has just awakened. Confident that he understands how the blade works, the protagonist prepares himself and charges at his opponent. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying monster is struck by a swift slash and lets out a cry of extreme pain. The beast tries to counterattack, but realizes the boy has disappeared, wondering if it was some form of teleportation. The demon tries to analyze the technique, searching for its limitations and where the next attack will come from. Suddenly, the surrounding structure begins to collapse violently, leaving the monster confused and surprised. The young man appears atop the falling debris, leaving his enemy in shock, unable to grasp his strategy. A massive amount of stone falls over the area, creating a trail of destruction and dust throughout the courtyard. The dust spreads, covering the entire combat zone as the impact shakes the battlefield. Opponent roars in fury amidst the rebel, trying to defend itself from the rain of stones burying it. Haruto observes everything with complete coolness while moving with ease, dodging the chunks of concrete. The demon screams in agony as it is struck once again by the hunter's absurd speed. The hero continues attacking relentlessly, unleashing precise slashes that cut through the air with a dark energy. Even wounded, the monster tries to track the hero's rapid movements to find an opening and strike back. At that moment, the enemy finally unravels the secret behind the boy's instant teleportation. It realizes that the hunter can turn any shadow he sees into his own to travel instantly to it. The small entity states that this blade is perfect for Haruto, and he prepares to finish the fight. The monster understands that the rebel was created on purpose to generate multiple shadows across the courtyard. It notes that the young man's attacks have become weaker in exchange for speed, and decides to ignore the light damage. The creature plans to take the next hit on purpose in order to counterattack with a fatal explosion. Seeing the protagonist approach, the demon smiles arrogantly, believing the boy has fallen into his trap. To the opponent's surprise, the hunter reveals a second sword and activates a technique called Zesso. The demon panics at the sight of the two blades and realizes, too late, that it underestimated its rival's power. In desperation, the creature attempts to release its body explosion technique to try and save itself from the attack. The young man warns that the monster's movements are far too slow and prepares to deliver the decisive blow. Enraged, the demon screams for the boy to stop moving and tries to strike him with all its might. The beast vows that this time it will capture the white-haired hunter and crush him completely into the ground. Kano watches everything, impressed by the way the protagonist is cornering such a strong monster. The monster unleashes a powerful attack of purple energy, believing it has finally hit its rival. However, the hero reveals that it was all just a trap and that the enemy landed exactly where he wanted. He points out that the demon was defeated by its own arrogance for thinking it had already won the fight. Suddenly, the creature smiles, revealing that it was actually the one who had been deceiving the protagonist all along. The monster is surprised to realize that the target before it was only an intangible shadow clone. The real hunter emerges from the shadows right behind the beast's neck, ready to end the battle. Haruto executes a devastating double slash, slicing through his opponent with his supreme technique of deception. The demon bitterly regrets its defeat, realizing it was the only fool who let its guard down in the fight. The monster's body disintegrates completely, and the hero finally manages to relax after the difficult victory. In another location, a mysterious man chained up laughs loudly while watching the situation from afar. The hunters realize, annoyed, that the enemy does not want to fight seriously and is just buying time. The chained man admits that holding back such strong warriors requires absolutely all of his effort. Suddenly, everyone feels a sudden shift in the atmosphere and looks up, surprised by the sensation. The warriors realize that the presence of the terrifying high-class demon has completely vanished. The mysterious opponent admits his defeat, claiming he underestimated the strength of the young hunters this time. One of the warriors charges forward with his weapon, furious, stating there will be no next time for him. The enemy manages to dodge the powerful attack with extreme ease and surprising agility. The villain gives a mocking smile, saying things would be very dull if the journey ended so soon. A massive pillar of destructive light strikes the location from the sky, shattering the magical barrier with violence. The students who are nearby look up in panic, unable to understand the origin of that immense light. The teachers realize with disappointment that the enemy managed to escape thanks to the help of a strong ally. One of the hunters examines the stakes left behind, suspicious of the true origin of that power. The leader decides to postpone the investigation to prioritize the rescue and urgent medical care of the students. The group of hunters agrees immediately and runs rapidly in the direction of where the students are. Haruto looks up, surprised at the glowing sky, noticing a drastic change in the academy's atmosphere. The young hunter feels extremely relieved to notice that the terrible cursed barrier is fading away. The other students who were trapped begin to celebrate joyfully, realizing they are finally safe. Kaino announces that she has finished the first aid on Inari, and the hero is immensely grateful for her help. Inari lies down, exhausted on the ground, and breathes a sigh of relief for having survived that terrible ordeal. Haruto shows a warm smile, feeling immense happiness for having succeeded in protecting everyone there. Kano looks at the hero with affection and admiration, recognizing the great effort he put into the fight. Suddenly, extreme exhaustion consumes the protagonist's strength, and he begins to collapse without reaction. Kano panics when the boy faints from exhaustion and ends up falling directly into her arms. Reinforcements finally arrive at the courtyard to ensure safety and provide help to the survivors. Instructor Atsuchi praises the group for their grand victory and apologizes for not having arrived sooner. He advises the youngsters to get stronger because dangerous, unforeseen events are part of a hunter's life. Professor Kusabi praises the hero's great endurance, which exceeded expectations for a rookie. Haruto feels extremely honored by the words of support from the mentors and thanks them sincerely. At a mysterious base, the enemies discuss the existence of a very dangerous young man at the academy. They agree that the hunters acted in a very suspicious way throughout the recent confrontation. A mysterious voice comments that the Togoku Academy group will not be an easy opponent to deal with. The ally asks if it was okay to let the hunter Takuichi Kusabi act that way in the operation. The mysterious person responds with indifference, stating they do not care one bit about the connection. She laments the loss of the high-class demon and blames the sloppy planning of her allies. The villain tosses a piece at the mirror, smiling, and says that unpredictability makes things more fun. The man retorts by saying that useless effort is not fun, but the villain guarantees that it was all in the plans. A dark-haired young man lying on a luxurious sofa greets the companion who has just returned. The guy on the sofa comments with disdain about the alley returning empty, handed from the academy mission. The invader apologizes and reports that the powerful demon they summoned ended up being killed by a student. The young man warns that attacking that academy was a mistake, as now the hunters will be much more alert. The villain smiles, unconcerned, and states that even with the defeat, they managed to obtain something valuable. He reveals that he found a very interesting toy, referring to the enormous potential of young Haruto. With a sadistic smile and sharp teeth, he vows that he will have the time of his life hunting the protagonist. Days later, Atsuchi announces that he will pay for a special Yenaku dinner to reward the best group. He reinforces the invitation excitedly, praising the excellent performance and effort they all demonstrated. The instructor opens the menu and tells the youths to order whatever they want to eat, with no restrictions. The students thank him, a bit embarrassed, and the mentor complains that their reaction to the free barbecue was weak. Inari thinks about how strong the instructor is and whispers to Haruto to stop staring at everything around them. Haruto reveals, with embarrassment, that it is his first time at the restaurant and he has never had yakiniku in his life. Surprised, the experienced mentor decides to take control and begins to point out several expensive options on the menu. He orders them to bring all the meats in the premium version, and the dishes arrive shining on the group's table. The young ones are amazed by the fantastic appearance and the unusual shimmer of that high-quality meat. Atsuchi jokes that a good demon hunter needs to eat grilled meat every 3 days of training, but the master encourages the students to eat a lot so they can become great elite warriors. Hungry, the 3 youths pick up their chopsticks and begin to savor the delicious pieces of grilled meat. Haruto enters ecstasy with the incredible flavor, stating that the tender fat opened up a whole new world of flavors. Inari agrees that the meat melts in the mouth, and Kaino celebrates, saying that eating together makes everything better. The hero smiles, blushing, confessing that he has never tasted anything so wonderful, and the mentor is happy to pay. Haruto reflects thoughtfully on the confrontation, knowing he never could have defeated that demon alone. Atsuchi explains the power divisions, showing that facing a high-class beast was thus something very atypical. He warns that in the future, facing several of these monsters at once will be common, leaving the rookies worried. Protagonist celebrates that his friend is fully healed, since the young man almost lost his leg in the fight. Sento and Sawa admit that they were very impressed by the excellent level of the Academy's spiritual medicine. The instructor reveals that the Hunter Association made a point of providing the best treatment to send a message. The message was clear: demon hunters would never surrender in the face of the evil forces' actions. He warns that healing power is not absolute, and Sento states that he would never want to go through that ever again. Curious, the protagonist asks the mentor who exactly are the villains that planned that cowardly attack. Atsuchi admits that they still don't know the details, but that the hunters are already tracking the criminal group. Haruto is worried to learn that the enemies were able to deceive even the most experienced warriors. The instructor advises that the best way to protect themselves from these dangers is for the youth to get stronger. The mentor calls the attention of the 3 youths, looking seriously at them before continuing his motivational speech. He praises their great courage in facing a powerful demon and says they should be very proud of themselves. Then, Atsuchi calls out to the protagonist while the boy is distracted savoring his delicious grilled meat. He playfully pulls the boy's ear, saying he needs to focus heavily on the basics before inventing new tricks. The mentor explains that mastering the basics will make him strong and that his evolution will motivate everyone around him. With a determined and friendly look, the instructor prepares to make an exciting statement to his students. He shouts happily, ordering everyone to eat even more meat to recover the energy lost in the fight. 2 hours later, at the restaurant exit, the master advises that he needs to accompany them to the train station for safety. The 3 students thank him politely for the wonderful meal, while saying goodbye to their beloved mentor. Walking back, the protagonist begins to reflect on the villains and remembers something of extreme importance. He recalls Muten's words, revealing that the target sought by the entity is also a very evil man. Haruto runs up to Atsuchi and asks if he knows anyone who possesses a completely invisible manifested blade. The instructor denies it, intrigued by the curious question, and wants to know if the boy knows the mysterious owner of that weapon. He comments that Professor Urashizaya might know this person, as he is a big fanatic of spiritual weapons. Sunto shouts from afar, calling his friend to leave quickly, and the boy runs so he doesn't get left behind. At the station, the white-haired boy comments excitedly about the food, and his friend asks if he is still thinking about it. The protagonist smiles, thanking the two from the bottom of his heart for being by his side, supporting his hunter journey. Sawa smiles joyfully and blushes, saying he is exaggerating quite a bit with the praise, but she feels very happy. The hero insists it isn't an exaggeration, for before awakening his power, he was completely weak and had no energy. Sunto is totally shocked by the surprise revelation, asking if his friend is just joking with him. Haruto confirms sadly, remembering that because he had no spiritual power, people treated him like a complete outcast. He recalls the times he begged to learn basic techniques, even without having any natural talent for it. The young man remembers the special moment when he managed to help someone and received a sincere thank you for it. In that instant of pure happiness, his chest filled with a comforting warmth that changed his whole life. He felt from the bottom of his heart that he was truly alive and that his existence finally had meaning. The protagonist explains that this unique feeling motivated him to use his skills to save people from danger. Sowai is moved by the sincere revelation and states convincingly that the young man has already saved many lives with his strength. She confesses that she only managed to pass the difficult academy entrance exam thanks to her friend's crucial help. The girl guarantees that all the people saved by him will hold on to that great eternal gratitude for the rest of their lives. The hero looks at his friend, deeply touched by the sweet words of comfort and encouragement he just heard. Sunto reflects and admits that it makes total sense for the guy to have been recommended by a renowned blade emperor. He reveals that he only had the courage to risk his life against the monster upon feeling Haruto's immense determination. The colleague thanks him from the heart, revealing that he managed to change his outlook and evolve as a hunter thanks to his friend. The hero focuses his gaze on Sento, moved by the incredible declaration of friendship and respect he received from his colleague. Excited, the white-haired boy says there is something special he has always wanted to do if he ever made friends. With an embarrassed smile, he asks shyly if he can start calling them by their first names. The two accept with great joy, and the green-haired guy says he can call him Sento with no problem. Haruto smiles, immensely happy, thanking Sawai and Azuna, and swears that their strong friendship will last forever. The three friends smile happily on the subway, celebrating the true new friendship they have just built. Later, under the starry sky, Instructor Atsuchi receives an important call from his ally Yuma. Yuma asks, curiously over the phone, what his first impression was regarding Haruto's abilities. The mentor replies that he liked the white-haired boy very much, and that he will certainly be an elite hunter. He adds that Professor Kusabi was suspicious of the power and asks if there were any other developments in the mission. Atsuchi reveals that the protagonist asked about a mysterious man, seeking to obtain more information. Yuma suspects that this unusual curiosity might have some connection to the sword god living in his weapon. He thanks him for the valuable information and plans to speak with Professor Urashizaya to get more answers. The instructor hangs up the call, hoping mentally that Yuma will be able to get along well with the young rookie. He decides to keep the findings a secret for now to prevent Kosei from finding everything out ahead of time. Lying in his room, the hero reflects that he only beat the powerful monster thanks to his sword's hidden power. He realizes the immense power gap and admires the absurd strength that the experienced mentors possess even more. The boy recalls the shame he felt when revealing to his new companions that he had gotten the minimum score on his exam. Haruto is happy to remember that his colleague offered to help him with his studies of the difficult spiritual arts. He decides to focus on evolving little by little and swears he will do his best in Master Kusabi's special class tomorrow. The next day, the academy students gather on a lawn surrounded by various spiritual creatures. Suddenly, Professor Kusabi looks coldly at the protagonist, stating that he is a terrible, evil threat. Haruto is immobilized by a powerful white energy and asks, desperate for the reason why that is happening. With an extremely merciless gaze, the mentor draws his sword, decided to eliminate the youth right there.